allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in compliance with NJSA 10:4, the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this duly and regularly scheduled meeting of the Jackson Township Board of Adjustment has been published and posted in all appropriate locations.
Roll call, please.
Here.
Here. Mr. Hurley.
Here.
Mello.
I don't think so.
Ms. Mills absent. Ms. Russell. Here. Bradley.
Here. Here.
And Mr. Chair.
Here. Okay, we have some announcements here.
Through the chairman, just quickly, before I guess we get to resolutions and stuff, we'll switch and make the announcements. There are two matters to be carried for this evening. Application number 4, Dubin Contracting LLC, Abraham Jacobs variance 3394 is to be carried to the March 16th, 2022 meeting without the requirement of further notice. Members of the public who are here for that application, that matter is being carried to the March 16, 2022 meeting. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, application, number 6, Michael Rosenberg, variance number 3399, block 13601, lot 22. That matter is being carried to the April 6th, 2022 meeting, again, without the requirement of further notice. On both matters, the applicant, on the, I should announce as well, on the Jacobs matter, the applicant is waiving time through March 31st. And on the Rosenberg matter, the applicant is waiving time through April 30th. I would also note, is Mr. Santana here? Or is, okay, your matter may be carried as well because we may not reach you, but we'll pay attention to the clock. It's all the announcements on, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Actually, I take that back. Well, I'll take control of this. As you know, we have a new recording secretary that we actually have to, she's doing the steno, obviously, but we need to make a formal appointment. Mr. Bell, how do you want to be appointed? The company name and what's the company name? So through the chairman, if you could ask for a motion to appoint King Reporting as our formal recording secretary.
I need a motion and a second on our recording secretary. And
I make the motion to appoint King Reporting.
Second.
you got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Absolutely. Okay, so do we have resolutions?
Block 401, Lot 9, Right to Go Road, approving a one-year time extension for a project that received preliminary and final site plan approval by Resolution 2019-35, dated August 7, 2019. Eligible are Mr. Book, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. Camello, Ms. Bradley, Mr. Costanzo, Mr. Najarian.
I need a motion and a second on this resolution.
Move to approve.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Book,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley, Mr. Costanzo.
Yes.
Mr. Najarian.
Yes.
Resolution 2022-10 Lowenthal, block 15803, lot 1, 8 Francesca Court, granting a variance to construct a fence. Eligible are Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. Russell, Ms. Bradley, Mr. Costanzo, Mr. Spaltoff, and Mr. Najarian.
Well, Mr. Spaltoff's not here, so,
So are you still eligible?
but you don't have to call him.
Okay.
That's all. Sorry.
Okay, I need a motion and a second on this resolution, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Fritsch? Yes. Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Ms. Russell? Yes. Ms. Bradley?
Yeah.
Mr. Costanzo?
Yes.
Mr. Najarian?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-11, Concourse Office Building, Concourse Holdings LLC, Block 13801, Lot 7.011197, East Veterans Highway, approving a one-year time extension for a project that received preliminary and final site plan approval by Resolution 2017-18, dated March 15, 2017. Eligible are Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. Russell, Ms. Bradley, Mr. Costanzo, and Mr. Najarian.
I'll need a motion and a second, please.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Fritsch? Yes. Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Ms. Russell? Yes. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Costanzo?
Yes.
Mr. Najarian?
Yes,
Those are all the resolutions.
excellent. Now we're going into minutes. You have any minutes?
We have approval of minutes from the regular meeting of February 2, 2022. Eligible are Mr. Book, Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley, Ms. Mello, Ms. Russell, Ms. Bradley, Mr. Spaltoff, Mr. Costanzo, Mr. Najarian.
I'll need a motion and a second on the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Book,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch, Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Costanzo.
Yes.
Mr. Najarian.
Yes,
If through the chair, if you could carry the executive session minutes once cycle. If that's all right. Thanks.
yes. Okay,
And then we have the payment of the recording secretary. Eligible are Mr. Book.
I didn't say it. So can we pay the vouchers? Those for you. There's two of them, one for $250 and one for $150, both going to King Reporting. Okay.
And they reflect what dates, sir?
For today's meeting, February 16th.
February 16th.
Just for the record.
Show up and you get thrown your voucher right in. Absolutely.
All right. I need a motion and a second on the paying of the bills.
Move to approve both vouchers.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Book.
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch. Yes. Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Costanzo.
Yes.
Mr. Najarian.
Yes. Okay, let's move on. All right. What I need first is the swearing in of the professionals.
Gentlemen, thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony, information, questions or comments you're about to present before or on behalf of the board will represent the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
From Mr. Hill, if you can introduce yourselves.
Evan Hill, Board Engineer.
Ernie Peters, Board Planner and Traffic Consultant.
Jeffrey Paporo, zoning officer.
Excellent. Okay. So we're going to hear the first application, first variance. It's 3390, Edward and Janine. Please come up. Mitruder.
Mitruder.
Mitch Ritter.
All right, Mr. and Mrs. Mitruder, you kindly raise your right hand. Each of you, thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions or comments you're about to present before the board represent the truth, whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can each of you give us your full name, someone to
Oh.
spell your last? Thanks. And your address, please.
Am I? Janine Mitruder, 2 Topaz Drive, Jackson, New Jersey. Is that all?
Edward Mitruder, 2 Topaz Drive, Jackson, New Jersey. Spelled Mitreuter.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't you tell us a little bit about why we're here today?
So we're here to apply for a variance to build an addition onto our house so my mother-in-law can move in with us. We were carried because you folks had asked us to update our survey and get a distance from the wellhead.
Right, okay, so I'm gonna ask Mr. Hill to jump in regards to what he sees.
Yes, that is correct. The applicants started their testimony back on November 17th, at which time the board asked them to obtain a more recent survey and clarify the distances and the variance relief they're asking for. They're proposing a single-story addition onto into the front yard of their house. They're a corner lot extending towards Sapphire Drive. The addition would consist of some sitting area, living space, a bedroom and a bathroom with closet and pantry. The bedroom addition would require an approval from Ocean County Health Department for your septic system. You're going to be required to expand that unless you're taking a bedroom away somewhere else inside your house. So, okay. So you're going to require a revised septic system approval. The plan provided, it's based on a survey dated January 8th, 2022, indicates that they're seeking variance relief for the front yard setback of 28 feet and 7 inches. So the proposed addition would be 28 foot 7 inches from the property line along Sapphire Drive. The well is now located, it's very close to the pool, and there's no, the proposed addition has no impact on the well.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Okay, board members, any questions for the applicant?
Through the chair. I could not tell from the application, and you may have testified to it before, so excuse me if I'm asking you a question that was asked already. You said this was for your mother-in-law?
Yes.
She's moving in. Can you tell me whether or not this is going to have a separate exterior entrance?
No,
Will not, okay.
correct.
So entry into this has got to come through the main doors of the house that you now have, and it's all interconnected inside.
Yes.
If you notice, there's like a common.
Could you just
space.
speak into the
Oh,
microphone?
I'm sorry. We're gonna go from our existing family room, and that's how we're gonna like kind of make that bigger, and that'll connect it, and she'll go through that way.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from board members?
So no one raised it specifically, but I think we should make it clear for the record, based upon the representation of the applicant, that there's no separate entrance, there's no separate kitchen. I don't see a need to require that there would be a deed restriction related to the definition of what we generally call the familiar or mother-daughter addition in this particular case. In essence, this is just simply a straight addition to the existing residence. And I see our experts nodding their head yes.
Okay. So if there's no additional questions, I'm going to open up to the public. Anybody from the public care to speak for or against? Any comments? Not seeing anybody coming forward. I'm going to close public session.
All right, just before you call the vote, Mr. Chairman, just as this was carried a little bit to make sure the record is clear, arguably, this has some unique characteristics because of the existing infrastructure in the back that was testified to by the applicants. Certainly, the board would have jurisdiction to grant what they call the C2 variance in this particular case. Given the level of infrastructure in the backyard, it would appear, and I think the board can make a finding that this is the best design for the use that they intend, because otherwise it would disrupt an awful lot of existing aesthetics. So this addition, so long as it properly connects to the residence and is tied in architecturally, the board could support this variance under the C2 criteria, in my opinion.
Excellent.
And the applicants are nodding their head yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'm going to need a motion and a second on this application.
Motion to approve the application as set forth.
And a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
I can't hear. Is that,
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yeah.
Mr. Costanzo.
Yes.
Mr. Najarian.
Yes, you have your addition.
Thank you.
Thank you for submitting the survey.
Thank you.
And thank you for understanding the necessity to do that. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you, folks.
Okay, who's next up? Let's see. Okay. Spiros,
Follows.
variance 3350.
Do an alternate, or they switched?
No, that's a different thing. I gave it
No.
a different.
This is first.
Yes,
You ready?
yeah.
Vince Halloran from Freehold. I represent Spiro Blahos. I'm seated in the back, and my two witnesses are John Plasconka and Jim Higgins. Good evening, members of the board.
Mr. Halloran,
Counsel?
is very important since we have one member who is participating via Zoom to hold on to your 7 folks to focus on speaking into the microphone.
I'll try to do that. I was having trouble hearing everybody myself, except for Judge Harker. I could hear him very well. Okay. Good evening. all.
So I would, you know what? Go ahead, Vince. Mr. Halloran.
In any event, what I'd like to do is call John Plasconka, the applicant's engineer, to describe the application, tell you what we're looking for, and go from there. John?
I asked to, is this engineer?
John Plasconka is the applicant's engineer, yes.
Okay, so he has to tell us about his credentials.
Oh, yeah, oh, sure, oh, absolutely, you swear him in normally.
Can you use the, all right, there's a separate mic too. Kindly raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your affiliation, please?
John Plasconka, Ploskonka, professional engineer, Manalapan, New Jersey. I'm the president of Concept Engineering. I've been appearing in various boards and commissions for about 50 years. I appeared before this board before. I appeared at numerous boards in Monmouth, Ocean, and Middlesex County for 50 years.
This board accepts your credentials. Continue with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr.
Can
Chairman.
we ask him a question about whether or not, when he went to school, it was uphill both ways? No?
With George Washington,
Oh, he was there?
That's where,
It's
that's,
nice,
that's
it's nice to see Mr. Plaskonka.
yes, that's who taught him how to survey, right, George Washington?
um,
There you go.
okay. The project is block 2201, lot 52, 643 Herman Road. It's been designated in the light manufacturing zone. And my client who's here tonight is looking to use that property for his business and storage of his equipment. There's a single-family home on the property, and there is a driveway, and this property is surrounded by commercial properties. If you look at, and I have several exhibits to pass out yet, previously, according to Evan Hill, the owner previously applied to do a interpretation for a vehicle delivery service back in 2009. It was denied, and Mr. Valhouse bought the property and now wants to use it for his yard. He has himself and his son and possibly 5 employees that come to the site in the morning when he's busy, take equipment, leave their cars there, are gone for the day, and then they come back in the evening and return the equipment, tools and vehicles, et cetera. And then that's the end of it. So there's no activity here during the day. Most of the activity is early morning and late evening in this commercial zone. It's a 3-acre zone, and he only has 0.91 acres, less than an acre on this property. And the surrounding properties are all similarly undersized. So because of that undersized situation, we end up with a number of waivers and variances because of the condition and the site. And there's no place to expand if you look at the adjoining properties. I do have an aerial photograph I'd like to pass out to the board members from Google. Yeah. Give me one copy.
Mark that A1, please, with today's date.
If you take the photo and you turn it with the cul-de-sac at the top, we'd all be orientating it correctly. So you can see the properties at the bottom of the page. It's the 643 Herman Road. And you can see the other uses to the right.
Howard, I apologize. Did you pre-get this?
I don't think so, no, Sean.
Can you put it in front of the camera at least, so our board member can at least take a look
Sure.
at it?
How do I do that?
Yes.
Mr. Jacob, is that at least? Thank you.
James, you out there?
I'm here. I can't hear anyone.
Can you see the picture that they're showing you through the camera?
No, I can only see but I have a copy of the Google map.
Oh, okay. Got lucky.
Okay, continue, proceed.
All right, so if we're looking at the photographs, you can see on Herman Road, the address of 643 Herman. You see the red dot, that's the property in question. You see to the right, commercial activity, to the left is commercial activity. And in the rear, it's zoned residential, but apparently the building to the left bought the property in the rear and put a commercial building at that location. So that although it's residential behind us, there's an actual commercial use in that area. There's also a dog kennel to the right of that building. So with that orientation, the client's going to construct approximately 1,500 square feet of new impervious surface to allow for appropriate parking that would give him 6 parking spaces on the site and 2 spaces in the garage that's on the site. As I said, this property is not used during the daytime. People coming in the morning and they leave and they're gone for the day to work on job sites. And normally they're working weekdays from 7 to 7, as a general rule, Monday through Friday, and possibly sometime on Saturday, depending upon what's going on. If there's an emergency, they make what, there's a water main break to help repair and stuff of that nature. We do have a memorandum from Evan Hill that I looked at carefully. We met with him one time and revised the plans so that now we have an infiltration system so that the stormwater management on site is taking the water into the ground, not for the 2-year storm, but the 25-year storm. And that we are not putting in curbing or sidewalks on Homer Road, but we provide a contribution to the pedestrian safety fund. We put parking bumpers on the parking lot spaces, and we have on the site on both sides 4 trailers for keeping tools that would be basically 8 by 40 and about 12 foot high. The equipment would be stored between the trailers in that rear area on the site, which would include many things such as tag-along trailers, dump trucks, box trailers, pickups, farm tractor, bobcats, scissor lifts, and these 4 storage trailers. So that's the kind of equipment he uses on a daily basis when the weather improves, and that's what he'd store on the property between the 4 trailers. We asked for waiving of the buffering requirements since there is no residential activities and we're surrounded by commercial activities. The plan will be revised to require and provide design waivers and what other items that Mr. Hill has requested, we would make those changes to the plan. With respect to Mr. Peters' report, our planner will address the planning issues, but there is no loading zone on this property. Equipment stored in the back. There's no, he mentions that we have but a commercial zone, and you can see that that commercial zone is there, but it is not used. It is used commercially, not residentially. We're subject to the Ocean County Board of Health, which would be hopefully a condition of approval if the board considers that approval. We're going to relocate the fencing on the property lines. The area for equipment would be stone, and the blacktop area would be that 1,500 additional square feet, which is now taking care of the drainage. And I think basically we're waiving the aisle width because we don't have 24 feet. We're a very narrow lot in this 3-acre zone, and we asked for the waivers that were outlined in our request. I think it's an overview that we could. Is there anything else you want me to add to that?
So, Mr. Hill, you have any, we cover you?
Was there, are you going to provide testimony on like the hours of operation, the type of uses, or the type of use? Is it a single tenant use or is it multi-tenant?
It's a single tenant use. I said the hours of operation were 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 5 days a week, and sometimes on Saturdays, or if there's an emergency, might be a little bit later.
And it's what type of contracting business is it?
He's a contractor that does road repairs and site work, and he's been doing that for about 20 or 30 or 40 years.
What type of vehicles do you anticipate accessing this site and utilizing the storage area, the gravel storage area in the back?
As I said, there would be dump trucks, box trailers, pickups, farm tractor, bobcat, scissor lifts, and the storage trailers that were proposed would be used to store tools. So as you needed tools or shovels or things, they wouldn't be laying around. They'd be in the box trailers.
So no material storage, no outdoors, no storage of
No
milling,
stone,
asphalt millings,
no
or
stone, no gravel, no asphalt, none of that. No.
okay. With respect to our review letter, which was dated September 23rd, 2021, I do want to thank Mr. Plaskanka for working with us in the beginning before we even saw these plans. So that was very helpful to have that dialogue with him. The concern here was from a historical standpoint, there was the prior owner of the property developed the property in a manner that did not seek site plan approval. So impervious cover was installed without obtaining site plan approvals. When we brought that to Mr. Plaskanka's and his team's attention, they agreed that they could do more to help alleviate the additional stormwater management runoff, not necessarily just as a result of what they're proposing here, but what was done previously. So we're making the entire site more better from a stormwater perspective standpoint. As such, the stormwater measures include installation of a dry well to infiltrate the 25-year storm from the dwelling. And also the grading design minimizes any adverse impact to the offsite adjacent properties. I believe, to support that, the applicant provided or performed some soil logs within the location of the infiltration and indicated that the permeability of the soils were suitable for the design. The existing structure is serviced by a septic system. We ask that the applicant obtain either certification that the system is adequately performing and is adequately sized for the proposed use, which they've agreed to pursue as a condition of approval. There is no curbing and sidewalk proposed along Herman Road. There is no curbing and sidewalk currently along Herman Road. The applicant has indicated that they will provide a contribution in lieu of to the township's pedestrian safety fund. One other note, note 11, the applicant's not proposing any site lighting throughout the parking lot or throughout the gravel storage area. We would like to hear some testimony on why you believe site lighting is not necessary.
It'd just be security lighting if someone might go on if someone comes there at night. It's fenced in, so there's no need for lighting at night. Most of the operations finish by 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have from our report. Unless the board has any further questions for me.
I'm just concerned about these trucks. They're going to be picking up this blacktop, breaking it up, bringing it back on the trucks. Are you going to be going and dumping these blacktop at locations and not storing it in the back of these trucks on the property?
There's no storage of any material on the property at all. Not in the trucks, not outside the trucks, not on the ground.
So they'll be empty when they come back.
They're empty. They go out, pick up blacktop someplace, go to a job site, drop it off, they come back empty.
That's my concern.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Ernie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our office has a report dated July 21st of 2021. While I'm certainly very interested to hear Mr. Higgins' testimony, I did just want to clarify some things on Mr. Plaskanka's testimony for the record. As the board knows, Herman Road's been developed in this sort of fashion. That might be more of a planning issue. But this site, as Evan indicated, didn't get a site plan approval. So this is more of a cleanup. So when we do this as a board, we always recommend that we try to be as specific as we can as to what's going to be permitted on the site and what's not going to be permitted on the site. Just like the chairman asked if the dump trucks are going to come back empty. So just a couple of things. Mr. Plaskanka, will there be any fuel tanks on the site?
No,
Will there be any repair of vehicles?
no,
There'll be no storage of hazardous materials.
that's correct. No storage of hazardous materials.
Are you proposing any site signage?
No site signage.
Will there be a dumpster anywhere on the site?
No,
And the only vehicles or equipment that will be stored on site will be owned by this business. It won't be rented out as a storage or leasing place to store construction equipment. It will be this vehicle, this business only.
this is one business to be used by this one client. No rental out of space.
Thank you. That's all I have from Mr. Plaskanka.
Thank you, Ernie. Yes, you had something.
Well, can someone qualify this Google map? What's the date? What's the date?
John Kenyon, the map that we
It
submitted.
was done today. It's 2021, I believe.
And is it Google Maps?
It's Google Map, yeah.
And did the applicant own the property at the time the picture was taken?
Yes,
Today, yes.
So the condition of the property as represented on this Google map picture is representative of of the client's activity.
correct.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Mr. Plaskakis, you may have testified to it, and I may have missed it, but as I'm looking at your Google map, there seems to be like a white highlighted line, rectangular shape. I presume that's your outlining of your client's property. Is that a fair
That's the
statement?
property line, yes, sir.
The red roofed building in the back, that does not belong to your client, correct?
That's not our property. That's owned by the people who own the building to our left. I think it's Empire Restoration. They, I guess, appeared before the board at some point and got approval for that building in the rear.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness? Okay. All right, we're ready for your next.
Another question. Call Jim Higgins. Thank you, John. Jim, would you basically give your background qualifications to the board?
Yes, okay, hold on one second while I
Sure.
take my hearing aid out, because it's really not necessary. Yes, I'm a licensed
Well,
professional.
hang on.
Oh, yeah,
Let's
yeah,
raise your
right
right
here.
hand. Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony, information, questions, or comments you will present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, your affiliation, and then through the chair, your qualification?
Sure, James W. Higgins, Higgins. I'm a licensed professional planner. I'm president of James W. Higgins Associates. The address is 14 Tilton Drive, Ocean, New Jersey. And I am a licensed professional planner. I've testified before this board, I think in the latter part of 2021, as well as in previous years. I've testified before several hundred boards throughout the state, before superior courts in at least 5 counties, including Judge Hurley at one point in time, and also been recognized for the state Supreme Court as an expert in the field of planning.
This board accepts your credentials. Continue with your
Okay,
presentation.
thank you.
Jim, give the board your benefit of your analysis of this application.
Yeah, surely. Well, Mr. Plaskakis described the site. The site is an extremely small site for the zone. The zone requires 3 acres and a lot width of 300 feet. This site is about 30% in terms of area, 30% of the required lot area, and it has a width that's less than half of what the ordinance requires. So it's a difficult site. It's also a site that's currently approved as a single-family residence, which is not permitted in the zone. What the applicant is proposing to do is to utilize the site as a contractor's yard, and the offices and the contracting business is a permitted use in the zone. Because of the way your ordinance is structured, it says a contractor's business with storage indoors, and because the storage is outdoors, it's technically not a permitted use in the zone, so a D1 variance would be necessary for that. When I look at the site and what's being proposed here, I think it makes a great deal of sense. First of all, what's being proposed is to eliminate a use that's completely non-conforming in the zone, the single-family residence. And then there's also substantial site improvements that are being made in terms of drainage, in terms of getting the site more organized and laid out. So I think there's definite benefits as far as those improvements to the site. And when I look at the thing, the contractor's yards, as I said, the contractor yards is a permitted use in the zone. So by allowing this use to be on the site, it brings the site more into conformity with the uses that are intended for the zone. And there's nowhere in the township that somebody can have outdoor storage of equipment and vehicles in any zone. So when you look at this area and the surrounding properties and the fact that the site is screened from any non-residential use, I think it's appropriate. It's particularly suited for what's being proposed here. the, just by comparison, what's this site, as I said, it's about 30% of what the ordinance would permit. If you had a fully conforming site with the setback requirements that are in your ordinance, somebody could construct a building that's 52,000 and change square feet in area. This site, if you just look at the 40% building coverage that's permitted, you could construct only a 15,900 square foot building, which is, I think, too small to store any substantial amount of contractors' equipment. And quite frankly, when you apply the setback requirements of your ordinance, you can just construct a building that is a little over 10,000 square feet in area. Now, somebody could come in, they could construct a 10,000 square foot building on this site that's 50 feet in height. And in my opinion, that would have a great deal more visual impact than what's being proposed here, which is a contractor's yard where nothing is going to be any higher than 12 feet. I think the trailers that are being proposed are going to be 12 feet in height. So visually, it's going to have much less impact than if the site were developed with a conforming 10,000 square foot building that were 50 feet in height. When I look at the municipal land use law, I think there are several purposes of the land use law that are advanced by the granting of this variance. The first is that to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And here you have, first of all, the site is being cleaned up. There's being substantial drainage improvements that are going to bring the site more into conformity with what your ordinance and what your professionals would like to see on the site in terms of drainage. Aesthetically, in the front of the site, it's going to be improved. There's going to be parking provided in the front of the site and landscaping that's going to improve the visibility of the site from the street. So I think that that purpose of the land use law is advanced. As far as to provide adequate light, air, and open space, again, as I discussed, this site could be developed with a building that's 10,000 square feet in area and 50 feet high, according to your ordinance requirements. And what's being proposed here? Yes.
So it's your testimony that build a 10,000 square foot building, 50 feet high, and meet all.
Sean, can you get closer to the mic?
It's your testimony that you can build that 10,000 square foot building, 50 feet in height, and meet all the setback requirements on the on this undersized lot?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And as I said, on a 3-acre lot, you could build a building that's about 50,000 square feet. So this is a building that's one-fifth of that, even though the lot's 1/3 the size. And I did scale that off and I measured it off, and it's a little over 10,000 square feet. So in terms of adequate light, air, and open space, again, you have equipment on the site that will be a maximum of 12 feet high and will not have the visual impact that a large building would have on this site. Also, with regard to encouraging the coordination of various public, private, and private procedures and activities shaping land development with the view of lessening the cost of such development and the more efficient use of the land. Clearly, you have an undersized site. If you applied all of the requirements of the ordinance to this site, you would have a very inefficient use of the site because of the setbacks that are required. And again, the setbacks that are required are primarily due to the fact that the site is less than half the width that the ordinance requires. It's 25 feet shy of the depth that the ordinance requires. And in terms of the buffer requirements, as Mr. Plaskanka explained, while the buffer requirements are from residential uses, residential zone, the property is surrounded completely by non-residential uses. So the buffer requirements really don't accomplish anything in this instance except to make the site less usable. And then the other purpose of the land use law is to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of uses that are appropriate. And again, the current use of the site is not permitted. It's a non-conforming use. What's being proposed here is a use that's much more conforming with the ordinance. The parent use, if you want to call it that, is permitted. It's simply the fact that the outdoor storage is being proposed, and that makes it a non-permitted use, but it's much more in conformity with the ordinance than what currently exists on the site. So when I look at all these things, I think there are substantial benefits, substantial improvements to the site that do justify the granting of the D1 variance. And the C variances that are necessary, most of them are existing conditions that can't be changed. All the sites around the site are developed, and they're also smaller than the ordinance would permit. So if you took, even if you could take property from some of those sites, you would be making those sites less conforming. And there's the new variances that are necessary basically deal with the accessory structures. And again, they're due primarily to the fact that the site is so small. If you comply with all of the ordinance requirements, you get much less efficient use of the land. So when I look at the whole picture, I think definitely there are substantial special reasons for the granting of the variance that's being requested, and there are positive reasons for the granting of the bulk variances. And I don't see any substantial negative impact whatsoever. The properties that are around it basically are developed right up to their property lines. And there's storage outdoor storage on a number of properties, including one that's directly adjacent to the site. So I don't see any substantial negative impact.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Mr. Higgins, you spoke quickly, and hearing here is a little bit difficult. So I would like you to expound upon, I guess, two concepts. Maybe they're interrelated, maybe they're not. The first one is, I noticed in Mr. Peters' report, and you've mentioned it, one of the critical aspects is that that materials and equipment are supposed to be stored within a completely enclosed building. And you're saying based upon the nature of this, the use of this property, the intended use of the property, you really want to store these things outside. Right? So I think I heard that.
That's correct. I think that is a much better.
Let me just
Okay.
finish so you can wrap it all
All right.
up for me. All right. So I'm a little curious to hear, what are those items in particular, if you know, that's being intended to be stored outside? And then how does that square with what I think I heard your testimony to be, was that you could build a 10,000 square foot building on this site? Or did I mishear you? Because if you could build a 10,000 square foot building on the site, then you would have a structure to store the equipment and materials in, would you not?
You would, but would it be a very small structure given the amount of equipment and no materials? There's equipment and vehicles. There's approximately, from my count, approximately 30 vehicles and pieces of equipment that will be stored on the site that Mr. Vlahos uses for his business. And a 10,000 square foot building, first of all, it's difficult enough to get that equipment, since some of the equipment is trucks, box trucks and so on, in and out of that building. And to maneuver them once they're in the building and to get them out would make it very, very difficult. And you would be using only 10,000 square feet of a 40,000 square foot site, as opposed to approximately 20,000 square feet that's being proposed by the applicant.
So it's only equipment and vehicles that will be outside?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Is there anybody going to be living in that dwelling? Is the applicant going to be living in that dwelling?
It's my understanding, no, that the residential use of that property is going to be abandoned.
So is there a fence that's going to protect his trucks that are in the back?
Yes,
And a gate?
yes, there's a fence and a gate that exists there now, and all around the back of the property.
Ernie, do you want to add anything at this juncture?
I didn't know if any of the applicant's witnesses had any of the previous development history of the site.
Of this site, Ernie, you're talking?
Of this site. We understand that your client owns the site now and is cleaning it up. So I suspect he's here either because he got caught or he's a good soul.
No.
So my question is, does anyone know how we got to this point?
Spiro's here and I'll call him.
No, I don't.
Have a history of the site, Spiro, you know what the guy did before? I don't think he does, but he's here. Ernie, you can ask him. He just bought it within the last year or so. 2 years. Maybe.
Well, He's owned it long enough that Google got a picture of it, right?
Oh, no, he's owned it for a while, but he's been working on this application. Jeff, do you know the history?
Any more questions? I'm waiting for Ernie.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, James, go ahead.
Along the question that was just asked, actually by you about the residence, I noticed in the zoning ordinance under this zone with this particular type of use that a residence is permitted so long as it is an employee or a custodian, something of that nature. I am to understand that there will be no residence in this property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Blavos is here and he'll verify that, on the road.
Thank you.
Okay, James. Any other board members have questions for this witness? Ernie, you done?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hill?
Through the chair.
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters, as I look at your grid in your report as to what variances are needed and what variances are not needed, the one that I would appreciate a little bit of an explanation on is under the parking setback requirements. It reflects required is 20, existing is 88, and proposed is 10 feet. Can you make some sense of that for me? And the same thing for the setback for the non-residential property line. I'm not quite wrapping my head around what that means.
I believe the use, and I'd ask Mr. Plaskanka if he wants to start, he and I can do this together. He's asking about the bulk standards that are listed for the setback for the parking.
For parking or for the building? For
No,
the,
for the parking, Mr. Piscott.
the parking lot or driveway is, as Mr. Hill pointed out, is paved from the entryway halfway back to the rear. And we're adding additional parking to the right, additional blacktop to the right, which we put in drainage so that we only have X amount of feet for the frontage, and the parking lot and the existing pavement is not within the required setback. Let me see.
Mr. Chairman, another question, if I may.
Go ahead, James, go.
Relative to the parking, is there any proposed parking in the front yard of any heavy equipment or any equipment?
No equipment, no material in the front yard. Everything is behind to the back and the rear, and there's no material at all. And the setback that was a variance is for the, to the residential zone in the back, which has a commercial building. 20, I think 20 foot's required. We have 10 foot to that property line, but it's a commercial zone. Commercial.
So any equipment that will be parked behind the building. Is that correct?
That's correct. Everything's behind the gate, which is at the end where the building is. There's a gate, so you'll see nothing from the road. You'll see the building and the gate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ernie, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to finish answering Mr. Book's question about the chart. Lot 47 to the right rear of this property is the, but it has a residential use associated with it. So the existing conditions on the site indicate that there's parking within 80 or 90 feet of that corner of the property. And they're proposing to stone up to 10 feet and use the entire, there's not necessarily a parking plan for the entire site, but they'll be parking, they'll be able to park within 10 feet of that property line. So it's the right rear corner of the property that coexists with the residential use / animal.
Kennel.
The kennel.
Thanks, Mr. Peters.
So that's how we got that arithmetic in the report.
Thank you. That explains it.
Okay. No more questions.
Thank you.
The board would like to hear from Mr. Vlahos. He's here. Spiro, why don't you come on up?
I'm sworn in.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Valls, thank you for raising your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your address, please?
My name is Spiros T. Vlahos, Spiros Vlahos.
And your address?
My
please.
address is 332 Millstone Road, Clarksburg, New Jersey, 08510.
Spiro, you're the owner of this property, correct?
Yes.
How long have you owned it?
I believe 2 years.
Do you know anything about the history of the property? How?
No, when I bought it, there was nothing there.
Okay. Now, you've heard all the testimony from Jim Higgins and John
Yes.
Plaskanka.
Yes.
Is there anything that you disagree with, or do you affirm everything that they said?
No, it's whatever
Okay.
they say, it's truthful.
There was a
I'm just-
question about anybody living there. Is there any
Nope.
intention?
Nobody's
gonna
gonna live
there.
in the
That's
house.
not your intention.
It's not a house, it's an office.
It's just going to be the office for them.
It is my office and my son's office. We do, like, when we do permits and stuff like,
Okay.
for the building.
That's basically all I have. If the board or professionals have questions, Mr. Vlahos is ready to answer.
Sure.
So it's a 7-day business, 7 to 7,
And
every
this,
day?
this, this business I do a lot of repair work on industrial buildings, on houses. You get a call. And if it's a Saturday or Sunday, we have to go out. Usually go 2 guys out. When I have big jobs, I need more vehicles. When I don't have, I have, like now, it's winter time. I don't do no snow plow or anything, so I park my truck. So when I get a big job, I have to hire more people. I give them vehicles. And that's why I need the yard.
And I wanted to hear it directly from you. So when the blacktop is ripped up on the road, you're taking it and dumping it someplace else?
I don't do no blacktop. I'm sorry.
I heard
I
you
just
repaired
do,
roads.
I do repairs. There is no, I don't have no milling machine. I don't have anything that would do big roads. I only do repair work. And that's why I have the tools there, those small tools. I put them in the trailers so they're not outside. And the trailers, when I get a big job, the trailer goes out. I have a tractor to pick the trailer up and it goes to the job site and stays there maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 months, or whatever it takes to finish the job. When I finish the job, and if I don't have another one, I have to bring it back. That's
Yeah.
what I do.
Okay, I want it on the record. Go ahead.
Through the chair, a clarification. What is the nature of your business? What
I
do
do-
you repair?
I repair buildings, houses, I build houses, and I do a lot of maintenance work.
Okay, the prior testimony was that you repair road, you repair.
I don't
roads.
do no roads. I don't
So it
have the.
paints a
equi-
picture of asphalt, et
I
cetera.
do like if it's a pipe broke in the street, we go dig it out, repair it, and we do it parts. That's it. I don't do new roads or,
Spiro, I think the question is you don't intend to store asphalt on.
no, there is no asphalt, there is no sand, there is no
Otherwise, you
stone.
might go somewhere and pick something up.
I will pick it up and I take it back and dump it. Like FCI and Freehold, the place in Jackson, there's a lot of places. That's what I do.
So the peak of your business is you employ a max of 7 employees altogether?
Right now, I employ 8, 7, 8, and me and my son.
And you feel that you're proposing 6 parking spots, that'll be a sufficient parking for your employees?
Yes.
Plus your various other work vehicles?
No, there is no, the vehicles that I have, once they might take it on a Monday and bring them back on Friday, or somebody will bring them to take them. There's no, like 6 parking from what I am now. We don't even have 6 parking spots.
Will the public be coming in to hear estimates in regards to your repairs?
No, sir. Nobody's coming there, only me and
Your son?
My son, we do the estimate, we make billing, and that's it. And we receive mail.
We were under the understanding it was road repair. That's what we
No,
heard
I'm
in the
not.
beginning of the presentation, so.
That's what I told Mr. Puskanka. I said, I don't do no, I do repair on the street, but not do road work. Road work, you need big dump trucks. I don't
Well,
have,
I'm glad you came up to clarify.
I don't have big dump trucks.
Any other board members have questions for the applicant?
For the chair, I'd like to ask the applicant
Go ahead.
a couple questions. You had indicated you purchased the property approximately 2 years ago.
I believe so, yes.
When you purchased the property, was it already previously cleared to the extent that you're proposing here? Was the site already previously developed? Did you develop it any further?
No, I did not. It was
So
there.
as it sits today is how you purchased it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. As far as the rear area, we're on the aerial photograph, they show a lot of vehicles kind of from a bird's eye view, it looks like it's just things are parked everywhere. However, you confirm it, you're not staging materials or items, you're just storing your vehicles and equipment.
I store vehicles, equipment that I use.
Okay.
I do not store building materials.
Okay. Is there a is there a method to your madness as far as how you are storing your vehicles?
Probably not.
Well, he's right.
So
I use the vehicles that I have registered. They're right by, like straight by the gate, like when you pull in, you take them out. The other ones that I do after I register them as I need them, I put them on the side.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Ernie, any questions?
Just one quick question. Based on the aerial and based on the exhibit up on the board, if this gets approved, ideally, there's going to be areas set aside for equipment, areas set aside for vehicles, and it's going to look a lot cleaner than what the aerial depicts.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, let's take that a step further. How do we quantify that? Will we designate certain areas for trailers, certain areas for box van?
So we have done that we have requested that from applicants on much larger sites with multiple tenants and multiple uses on a site. We can certainly do that here. However, I think my personal opinion is if you say this area is only going to be used for the storage of 3 Bobcats, but then somebody drops the Bobcat off on the other side because there was something else in the way, is that worth him getting a zoning violation on? I'm not quite certain it's going to work that way here. I think what he has here, he has a plan that demonstrates that there's sufficient area for the equipment he owns. And if he ever gets to the point where he outgrows that and it becomes a safety hazard, then that's where a code enforcement can come into play and say, well, we see dump trucks, we see other people's vehicles here and so on. That's his code enforcement.
So to that point, do we draw a line to stand now and say you can only have 30 vehicles? Or
I think he's already tested. I think you could get clarification on how many vehicles and what type of equipment and how much. So we have asked that before from applicants. Yes. So if it's 5 trucks, okay, 5 trucks. If it's 3 Bobcats, it's 3 Bobcats.
I think through the chairman and Mr. Costanzo, if I'm misinterpreting your point, you'll articulate that. But this is important for the applicant as well. What I hear Mr. Hill saying and what I hear Mr. Costanzo's concern being is that the applicant, because it's a small site, the applicant is limited to his testimony. And that if your business expands beyond the 30 combined.
In other words, Spiro, is that what you anticipate the most you will need?
I don't know, the business, if you.
What he's telling you is if you go over what.
Right, but in this business, like if everybody wants to get bigger and bigger. Right, right now.
Well, we can't hear the question that you asked.
He's telling him that right now he's limiting himself to 30 vehicles, and I'm trying to ask him, is that enough what he anticipates before having to come back
Well,
or something else.
so that's nice. That's respectfully the wrong way to articulate that question.
Oh, I'm
I know
sorry.
it's to your client, but the concern, and I'm really trying to mimic Mr. Costanzo's point and following up on what Mr. Hill says, recognizing that the lot is undersized, recognizing, using Mr. Hill's words, to a bird's eye view, that there does not appear to be a methodology to the manner in which the client is parking. It's important for the board, given past history and the follow-up as well with the zoning officer, that that site, because it's undersized, maintain some level of methodology. One control that could be is a limitation on the number of vehicles in direct relation to the size of the size of the site. Now, the board could disagree with that. Am I getting your point?
Yes,
though?
yes.
I don't think we have any problem with that.
Well, that's not what your client just said. He's concerned.
You know, my point is, what is the capacity to have vehicles on that site? Is that a quantifiable number?
So it's not necessarily quantifiable, but I think that the burden would be on the applicant to demonstrate that if he wants a maximum of 30 vehicles, he should do a couple things. He should tell you the quantity and type of those vehicles, right? That's first and foremost. And second, indicate that they're all going to be stored behind the building. I think that's important. We've heard that in testimony. Beyond that, if it's parked on the left-hand side of the rear or the right-hand side, I don't know if we really want to get into that, nor do I think it's important or necessary, I should say, right? But I think if we get a vehicle count, like we have on similar types of applications, code enforcement can quantify, there's a big difference between 30 vehicles and 60 vehicles. So I just would like to know what's the maximum amount of vehicles and what the composition of those vehicles equipment is.
Agreed, and that's to Jeff's comment before, in enforcing it, what are we enforcing? Is it a capacity issue, or as we're leaning toward a numbers issue here? I mean, what, Jeff, you could just, educate me on that, what is, when code goes to a site, they see a number of vehicles, just because they're disarrayed, it's one thing, but if the site has capacity, what is that capacity?
Well, I think the concept of what you just brought up, the amount and the area in which they're parked. Once again, we're not going to say Bobcats over here, dump trucks over here, but if based on the testimony, there was 30 vehicles and pieces of equipment total for the site. If they're all configured and parked behind the building, that will be, and
And the 4 trailers.
well, whatever
Those are
was
storage.
testified to, and there's an area on the plan that shows where they can and cannot be parked, that should be enough for enforcement purposes.
Is the guy and everything behind the building?
Yes, so exceeding the capacity could be all of a sudden it starts bleeding out onto Herman Road, or they start parking in the front yard, or they start parking on areas that aren't delineated as gravel and storage here. So I think we have the controls in place here for code enforcement to say, this is the area you're supposed to be using for storage, and the other areas you can't.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, James, go ahead.
when I first looked at this application, I read all the reports, I looked at the maps that have been supplied. My first reaction was that this may be an overutilization of the site. However, listening to the testimony so far, I have my main concern now is just about what we were talking about. This is also an application for final site plan approval, isn't it? And do we have a sufficient site plan in order to take that action? For example, the trailers that are parked in the rear, on the sides, how do they get in and out of there? Now, I thought the owner is testifying, or the applicant is testifying, that he brings his truck in and he backs up to it and he pulls it out to go to the job that he's going to. Maybe I misunderstood that. But if he's going to have other equipment that's going to be parked, he answered my question and to other questions that it will all be behind the building, but where? And how does it get there? The only thing I see, unless somebody has a different plan than I have, the only thing I see is access to and from Herman Road along the proposed parking area, which is to the left of the buildings, and nothing to the rear. So how do you get back there? How does he get the trailers out of there? Where is he going to park the vehicles? Is he going to park the vehicles in an area that may hinder getting those trailers out safely? A lot of questions here. I think for me, I would like to see a final site plan that will at least address all of those issues.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Hurley, good points. I'd like to try to, this is Evan, I'd like to try to address some of your comments. Your first comment regarding the trailers, it's my understanding that these are storage trailers. These are not trailers on wheels that constantly come in and out of the site. These are for material storage. I'm sorry, for equipment storage, correct?
I thought he testified that he pulls a trailer out and will take it to the site, and it might stay there as long as 9 months.
That's different than what these 4 trailers on the plan are depicted as. So
Well, where are the other trailers then?
So the balance of the site, when you come into the site, and you go through the gate, which is where the 2-story frame garage and shed is, the rest of the site is already paved and or will be gravelled. And that whole back area there, it delineates the edge of the stone. It indicates where they're going to be putting stormwater improvements in piping, but it also shows the area for vehicle and equipment storage. So there is nothing from a site improvement standpoint. It's gravel, it's stormwater improvements, and some paving up along the dwelling. As far as the plan that was submitted, it meets the requirements for a preliminary or final major site plan with the variances and design waivers they have requested. So we do have a preliminary and final major site plan that was submitted as part of the application.
Well, I understand that, but my concern here is that according to the testimony that I just heard, for example, from the applicant himself, that he hopes to expand his business. My first reaction was, based on what he has now, that it may have been an overutilization of this site. And now if it goes to the numbers that he's talking about, is this site going to be able to handle that? And the only way that I can see it is if he shows me how all of these parts are going to piece together and where. It's almost like a jigsaw. Where are all these vehicles going to be? Where are these other trailers that he's going to pull in and out? Where's the heavy equipment, if there is such a thing as heavy equipment here? Where is it going to be placed and stored? Those are my questions. I guess my concern here is I'm not totally satisfied with the plan for a site plan approval. For the variance issues, I think they've addressed most of my concerns, if not all. But for site plan, that's just my point of view.
If I could simply add to the testimony and maybe clarify something, the 4 box trailers proposed are not to be coming in and out. They are going to stay on place. But he will have 3 tag-along trailers that will be there, 12 dump trucks, 3 box trailers, 8 pickups, 1 farm tractor, 2 bobcats, 3 scissor lifts, 2 box trucks, 18-foot, and then the 4 trailers that are permanent. So those elements will fit in that area behind the house easily on the 20,000 square foot. And they will then be limited to that number of vehicles, which is about 34, I think. That could not exceed 34 placed behind the fence, behind the building. And then they would be going in and out in the morning and in the next day or 2 days later or 3 days later. So there's very little activity here except the storage of these equipment.
Well, I could accept your statement that all of that equipment that you just mentioned, which is a lot of equipment, it can be put back there. The question is, can it be taken out of there safely? How do you circulate all of that equipment in and out? That's a problem for me.
Well, he's been doing it for a number of years in different locations. I'm sure he can do it here. He knows what the job coming up is. The stuff that's not being used would go to the back, and the stuff being used would come to the front and move it around a little bit and take it out that driveway. There's plenty of room to get out that driveway.
So in other words, not everything's going in and out every day.
No, he's going in and out very rarely,
As
actually.
needed, yeah.
So a couple in the morning and then back in the evening, or maybe back a week later. So there's not a lot of activity here. It's a very low activity, very low usage facility for this property.
Well, I understand. And my concern again is if we grant this variance, it runs with the land. And it may not be him as the operator in 5 years from now or 6 years from now. And he may have expanded that business to a pretty large extent. Maybe his son or whoever may be taking over the business. We don't know that. My only point is I would just like to be satisfied that all of that equipment can fit on this site. Mr. Higgins mentioned or testified that it's an extremely small site, and I accept that. And that's why my first conclusion initially when I read it was this may be an over-intensification. And now we're talking about all of that equipment in there along with these trailers. Other than what you show as for storage, there are going to be other trailers. I thought you said 3 maybe. How do they get in and out of there and circulate? I guess Mr. Peters can address that, testifying for traffic as to whether or not it can be safely moved in and out. I don't see it, quite frankly.
Through the chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know if Jim's done. Would it not be feasible, I think, to answer all this?
I can't hear who's talking.
It's Steve, Jim. I'm just saying, I'm thinking out loud here, proposing that a site circulation plan should be presented to the board to may quell this concern if.
At least.
So, and along those lines, and this is a question, listening to the board's queries, I'd ask Mr. Halloran to think about perhaps amending his application to simply seek the use variance and preliminary approval and leave some of the details that the board is talking about for final approval.
That doesn't sound unreasonable. Otherwise, grant the variance subject to approval of a site plan or modify the site plan or whatever you direct us to do.
I don't know if we have enough information to grant preliminary approval. You know, you're going to grant preliminary, which is here's the plan, folks, but these are conditions that have to be addressed for final. Do we have enough for preliminary?
Judge, I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for the variance subject to a site plan. I'm not looking for preliminary approval of a site plan that you don't understand.
Okay, so you're looking just for the variances.
Yeah. I
So
think
you'll amend the request for tonight.
Whatever I have to do. Can I do
Okay.
it orally?
I'd be satisfied with that.
Yeah, thank you, Judge.
Okay.
We hear the concern and I think we can address it. He wants to be able to move around on the property, obviously.
Right. His testimony, which we heard earlier, was that if it gets busy, he's going to bring in more workers and rent more trucks. So that is a concern of the board. So then we're going to go
Okay.
beyond the 30 at one juncture, somewhere. All right.
Okay,
So
that's not the way I heard it. I heard it to be, there would be some limit and you'd be willing to accept
we
it.
didn't hear the limit issue.
Well, no, I said it. I don't know whether it was testified.
Okay.
I'm not
Where are we at
arguing,
this
I just-
juncture?
Clarifying.
Have another client, another witness that wants to speak?
I can't hear
You
you.
got another witness?
No. Thank you. I didn't know whether you were finished with
All
Spirit.
right, I'm going to
That's all I
open it
have.
up to the public.
Yeah.
Anybody care to speak for or against on this? Not seeing anybody coming forward. I'm going to close the public session. So we have to make a decision here.
Well, you should briefly address a closing.
You guys are experienced. You heard
You
the
want to
testimony.
close? You want
Yeah.
to close?
Oh, I'm satisfied.
So the board needs to deliberate, understanding that the applicant has amended its request or his request and seeks only the use variance at this particular point.
Would it be the use variances along with the bulks? Looking for all of those variances, correct?
May I just have one, while you're doing that, and subject to something. I don't necessarily think you need a full site plan. I think you really just need some kind of circulation plan. I'd just like you to have that as part of what you're doing. In other words, somebody doesn't say,
Well, then you would ask, listen, this is, I think then my opinion to that request respectfully is if you're seeking just the use variance, it would be subject, you would have to then resubmit for preliminary and final site plan approval. You can ask for whatever waivers from that you deem sufficient based on what you heard tonight. I'm not going to lay out the conditions or the floor to what the board may be expecting, because as you start redesigning the site, provide that circulation plan. For instance, you do a circulation plan, which was a specific request of at a minimum, I heard of at least 2 board members. You may determine that more than site lighting is required. You may determine that notwithstanding the buffer waiver, that you should add some landscaping to the back. I mean, one of the issues the board didn't address at all, that now if you're willing to do a site plan, notwithstanding there's no parking in the front yard, and the quasi, you understand. All right. Deliberate.
Chairman,
Yeah, James.
I would be comfortable addressing the D1 variance, the use variance, but not the C variances until such time as the site plan has been presented, so we can see whether or not the location of the parking, the location of the storage trailers, things of that nature create any problems. But I would feel comfortable addressing the D1. I'd be more comfortable dealing with any bulk issues until a site plan is presented.
So, and Mr. Hurley, to perhaps respectfully through the chairman, given the fact that you'd be satisfied in addressing the D1, can you begin the deliberation process?
Sure.
Thank you.
As far as the D1, the use variance is concerned, I listened to the testimony of Mr. Higgins, and I have a tendency to agree with the positive aspect that he's presented, that the purposes of zoning have been satisfied. He mentioned several of them, and I agree with them. I won't have to repeat them. I think, although not specifically addressed, I think this particular application is particularly suitable to the site because, as Mr. Higgins testified, it is a small site, and if it were to be developed in accordance with those that are strictly permitted, I shouldn't say strictly, I guess I should say which are principal uses that are permitted, that it could be even more overburdened. And as a result of that, I think that the site, the application as presented, it is particularly suitable for this site. As far as the negative criteria is concerned, I don't see any detriment to the public good here. All of the surrounding properties are commercial in character. That's what is proposed here. Although not technically a conditional use, it is similar to a conditional use because the proposal of a contractor's office, repairs, things of that nature are permitted so long as, and the so long as is the storage of those vehicles be inside a building, which is not requested here. So that's the differentiation. But the use itself is a permitted type of use. Surrounded by the properties, it's not a detriment to the general welfare of the community. It's not substantially has a negative, does not have a negative substantial impact on the zone plan, since the use is, quite frankly, is permitted. It's just an undersized lot. It needs to be worked in order to satisfy the requirements for the bulk issues itself. Based on all of that, I think the testimony supports the grant of the D1 variance in this regard, subject to site plan approval.
Thank you, Jim. Paul, you have anything?
I went out to the site, I took a look at it. Mr. Hurley's observations placed upon the record, I would completely concur with that. I think it's a benefit to the area to have this improved. Although I may have a different opinion on the site circulation issues, we'll come back and visit that another day. But otherwise, it seems like an excellent use, and I see no negative. I see it only benefiting the public good.
Thank you, Paul. Steve?
Yeah, I concur with my colleagues. I mean, everything is good, but we just need that little bit more to address the other issues. And that would be in my mind, the site circulation survey. That would clean up any misgivings or misunderstandings that any board member may have presently.
Thank you, Steve. Any other board members have any deliberation? Okay. Okay, excellent. Okay, so it's left to us. So we're looking at the D. I need a motion and a second.
I'll move it.
Second.
We got a motion and a second.
The clarification on the motion is use variance.
Subject to the site plan.
Okay, very good. All right, so
It's the grant of the D1 variance subject to site plan approval.
good.
That's
Okay,
it.
yep.
That's the motion. All right, I need a roll call on that.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell? Yes. Ms. Bradley? Yes. Mr. Costanzo?
Yes.
Mr. Najarian?
Yes. We're going to take a break. We're going to reconvene at 8:35. Zoom, next application. What?
Make sure Jim's here.
Jim? You out there? That's the guy at the end.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
There you go. All right, you went for cookies. I knew it.
I be here.
Okay, we're going to resume here. So the next application is Almond Properties. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, members, professionals, John Paul Doyle, partner in the firm of Carluccio, Leone, Diamond, Doyle, and Sachs in Toms River. Tonight, I and the firm is privileged to represent Bill Almond, Almond Properties. We come before you for a use variance and preliminary and final site plan approval. The property, as you well know, is located on West Veterans Highway. It is the site of a previous use variance approval granted by this board, also for commercial use. I mention that not to say that we're entitled to one as much as the last one received it, but rather to say that when the board made certain factual and legal conclusions in their finding to grant that, we have the same fact pattern, we would think. Bill Almond is no stranger to Jackson Township. We come before you with his record of having been a successful operator of Sit-in Septic Company. They seek to change their location from where it was in Jackson, but to remain an essential part of this community as he himself has been. On the road to here, we have already received County Planning Board approval and of course, a certificate of filing with the Pinelands, otherwise we couldn't be here. So that's the history of the site. The site is a 4.4 acre site of which we cover, that's the coverage. We only cover 4% of the land with an 8,000 square foot building, which is the same size as the building that was approved. I know particularly from the last application, we need to tell you a lot more. Hopefully we will do that concisely and to the point. With that said, we will present the testimony of Mr. Almond, our engineer, Graham McFarland, and our traffic engineer, John Ray. First, have Mr. Almond sworn.
Mr. Oldman, kindly raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Kindly give us your full name, spell your last.
William Joseph Allman, Allmann. 41 Allison, Allysson Road, Jackson, New Jersey.
And your affiliation with the applicant.
I am the 90% owner of Almond Properties LLC.
Through the chair.
Thank you. You're the principal of that company.
Yes, I have been for 38 years.
And what is the nature of your business?
I do septic installations and repairs.
In the old word, a honey dipper.
Honey Dipper, number 2 and number 1 business, or
Okay.
number 1, number.
And where has the business been previously?
I'm on Harmon Road, almost across the street from the last applicant.
With respect to the operation of the business, what do you do?
My personal thing is what I do, sales and collections, but my crew that goes out, or crews, depending on how busy the economy is, they go out and install septic systems during the day.
In a couple of words, explain to the board the importance of a company like this, particularly in a regional and unsewered area like much of Western Jackson, Western Monmouth is.
Yeah, Jackson's about 100 or 50% septic in the septic areas. Plumstead's 100% septics, Upper Freehold's 100% septics, and Millstone's 100% septic. So moving to the west side of town is a lot more easier for me to get my equipment in and out to these job sites.
You come by your knowledge of who's sewered and who's septic from your chairmanship on the MUA?
Yeah, I'm the chairman of the Jackson Utility Authority. So I know where the sewered area are and where they're not.
For the typical resident or home in that unsewered area, how often do they need your services? Assume 6, 7
Well,
member
I don't do any
family, a
pumping
few
at this point.
bathrooms?
I don't do any pumping at this point. I don't want to limit myself. But I mainly do the installations and repairs. And most of the repairs on the new, the sales at this point are requiring 90%, and 9 out of 10 are requiring a repair. So that's the way the septic systems are going at this point. So 9 out of 10 resales require a septic repair.
Let's come back to the site. What happens at the site to facilitate the business you've operated for 38 years?
Mainly what happens is the trucks and equipment, they don't always come back into the yard. They go from, the equipment goes from job site to job site. So the trailer may come back in and then the dump trucks leave. And the dump trucks will bring in any excess material from the site, which is double wash septic stone from Trap Rock Industries or sand from either Clayton or from Rosano pit over in Neptune or Tinton Falls.
What's cleaned out of a septic tank doesn't go back to this site.
Nothing at that point goes back to the site. And
Where does it
I don't
go?
plan on everything come back to the site. So what happens is if I do get a pump truck, because it's easier for me to schedule my jobs around the pump truck, that would go, any waste that would come into the yard would go down to the Ocean County Utility Authority dump site.
Now you have employees,
Yes, I do. I have 7.
you have vehicles, trucks, equipment.
Yes, I have dump trucks. I got excavators. I got bulldozers. I got, tag along trailers, Bobcat, tractors,
Approximately how many?
approximately 15 pieces of equipment at this point.
The-
But it's not stored, it's not all stored there.
They would be stored on the site.
Most of the equipment is on the job sites. Some equipment will be there, like a Bobcat might be there. I also own a farm in Jackson that the Bobcat's normally there. And also, got to yell. Okay.
Slow down a little bit.
Okay. So I do have other equipment. I have another piece. I have a goat farm in Jackson that I keep the Bobcat there and also my farm tractor. But sometimes that will be at the shop.
The storage of materials would be done how?
Storage in the back would be the bigger Allen blocks. And that would be for excess stone or prepositioning stone for the next job. So what happens is it takes an hour and a half to get a dump truck up to Trap Rock and come back, and another hour to get back. So 2.5 hours by the time you're loaded and back. So if I store 30, 40 loads of stone there, I can get a couple jobs done. And when we have bad weather, the guys stockpile some more stone there.
When the last application for this site was presented, there was a concern. The testimony was that all of the trucks would leave at the same time, pretty much 15 of them at 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was sort of a parade that might interfere with traffic. Is that your operation?
No, my operation isn't that. A lot of times if the equipment's already on the job site, the guys will take the pickup trucks in the morning to the job site and use the equipment on the site. Yeah, dump trucks they pretty much go out every day, but it depends on where they're running to. So it could be one truck could leave at 5:30 in the morning, go to Trap Rock, and the other two trucks could go to Clayton Sand at 8 o'clock.
There's mention made in the report of whether you would have tenants. Explain the answer to that.
Well, being that, you know, the size of the building, the size of the property, the amount of taxes and insurance, anything that can help offset the cost for a small business like I have, I may have to rent some space out.
You would limit to whom you would have rented it?
Yeah, I'm looking for the contractor type tenant.
While not in the septic business, similar to your operation.
Well, it could possibly be somebody in the pumping business.
I see. Anything else before I go to Graham that you think the board should know about your operation and your plan and how this site is the right fit?
I have had my business out here for 35 years and haven't had a complaint in town the whole time I was here.
When you say a complaint, no notice of violation?
No notice of violations or anything else. I run a clean operation and an honest operation.
There was mention made of residents on sites. There's no plan to have any.
No residents on site.
And it's presently and has been vacant for the last several years?
That's correct. I bought it thinking that the site plan, the original site plan was still viable. And then it expired because they never perfected it.
So you already own the site?
I bought it, and then when I came in to put a building up, I was told that it had expired. It wasn't perfected.
And let me make it clear, despite the mentions of the business, there's no odors associated with it.
No orders,
The site.
because it's all clean. It's all double wash septic stone, and it's all clean filled from either Rosanna or from Clayton.
Okay, let me let the board have a chance.
At any one time, Mr. Almond, will you have at least 5 dump trucks on that property sleeping at night while the men go home?
Yes, at night. Yes.
Through the chair. A couple questions, if I may. You made mention about possible tenant and renting out space. Would it be space in the yard or space within the building?
It could be either or.
Okay. My second question, you propose stockpiling, topsoil, fill dirt and sand toward the rear of your property. What would be the capacity? How much would you store there? How much tonnage, cubic yardage?
Probably each bin would probably be between 30 and 50 loads each bin.
You say bins. I thought the stockpile.
Well, they're leftover concrete blocks, like
Oh,
the
they would
road
be-
barriers, So they would come up about 10 feet and then the material would sit in those bins,
And the height of the piles would be no more than,
10 feet. Well, the bins, but yeah, the bin, the concrete barriers.
but how the pile itself, would it exceed?
It would probably go over a little bit over the top, whatever you can get, because it would spill over the sides if you go too high.
Thank you.
It's pretty much pre-positioning the material. So if you're doing a job in Jackson, you're not waiting for hours for material to get back in. You can run it, and then on the inclement days, the trucks can run to the pit and stockpile it, pre-position it, and keep the guys working for the whole week.
For the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the plan currently shows one storage bin with a concrete pad. And
That's for the
it's
clean stone.
42 by 48. That's for the clean stone. Okay. And then and then the plan shows 3 areas, not storage bins, but areas for stockpiles.
Right.
Okay. So each stock, I just want to be clear,
Okay.
you're not proposing to revise this plan.
No,
Okay.
no, that would just be free-flowing piles with its sand or topsoil.
And you said the maximum height is 10 foot high on each one of those?
Yeah. Machine can only push it up so high.
Any questions? Almond? James?
I have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ram?
Let's have them sworn in.
Mr. McFarland, thank you for raising right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, the questions or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
And kindly give us your full name, spell your last, your affiliation, and through the chairman, the qualifications as a planner.
Sure. Graham McFarland, MACFARLANE, professional engineer, professional planner, certified municipal engineer, principal of professional design services, providing testimony tonight for both engineering and planning matters. Previously appeared before this board on many occasions.
This board accepts your credentials. Continue.
Thank you. Did you pass these out?
Yes. If you take us through the exhibits, recalling that each of the board members has in front of them the aerial that is presently on the screen.
Yeah, it's just an overview of the application. We'll start with A1. A1 is an aerial map, which is a current photograph from October of 2021. You can see that this map shows the shows the location of the site pretty much centralized on the exhibit. You can see the boundary of the site outlined in yellow. Properties is identified as block 18201 lot 17. Contains about 4 acres, located on West Veterans Highway in the western section of town, not too far from Hawken Road and the border of Jackson with Plumstead Township. The subject site is located in the neighborhood commercial zone. You see the zone lines identified in the teal color on this map. You'll see a residential zone that lies to the east, a residential zone that also lies to the north of the subject. And again, the site is in the neighborhood commercial zone. Land immediately to the west is vacant. Then the pool store is the next property over to the west. Immediately to the north is a site that the board recently approved as an ATV park or training facility. So obviously the board is familiar with this part of the town and what's happening out there. As discussed by Mr. Allman, the application is for a contractor's warehouse, also including some office space. The plan is to construct a building of 8,000 square feet. 7,000 square feet would be dedicated to the warehouse use, and 1,000 square feet would be dedicated to office use associated with the warehouse. Anthony, if you could go to A2 next, please. And then maybe just zoom in a little bit for us so we can see it. So what we have on the screen now is A2, which is a site plan that was submitted with the package in support of the application. One item that we've already had some discussion on is the storage of materials. So I'll just touch on that very quickly. What we have proposed is one storage bin here to be made of concrete blocks, which would be 3 courses high of 3-foot blocks. So the storage bin would be 9 feet high. That's consistent with the prior approval for this application as well. Then, as Mr. Allman spoke, we have an area here to the east, which will be used for loose stockpiles of fill dirt, sand, topsoil, anything else that may be needed in connection with the business. We're also identifying an area on the site.
Graham, can I stop you right there before you move on? So those, as previously testified, I think it may have been an error. Those 3 piles will not be enclosed by the concrete bins.
Correct. The only concrete bin, we have 1 concrete bin proposed in this, I'll call it the western part of the site. And that's for the clean stone, which has to be confined and contained. So it can be easily loaded and pushed. Those other 3 piles are loose piles. We're not proposing bins around those piles.
Thank
you. Then we also identify outdoor storage in this portion of the site, more centrally located along the eastern, close to the eastern property line. That would be for pipe castings, septic tanks, other products that may be necessary for operation of the business. Working our way forward, we do show an area here on the site dedicated for the storage of vehicles and equipment. Again, as Mr. Almond spoke, that would be dump trucks, trailers, backhoe, excavators, things of that nature, again, that are used in connection with his business and may also be used by any prospective tenants. It is anticipated that Mr. Almond will utilize 3 of the bays of the building. The building contains 5 bays right now. So it's anticipated that his business will use 3 bays, and then he would have 2 bays that would be available for rental for tenants to utilize. The expectation is that the tenant would be a contractor, similar to the operation that Mr. Almond uses, but he's also looking to maintain what's permitted in the zone. We're not looking to give away all of the permitted uses in the zone, because I think there are some that are permitted that would be compatible with Mr. Almond's business. And if I run through that very quickly, if you look at the neighborhood commercial zone permitted uses as outlined in 244-56, this zone really envisions what I call like a downtown Americana. For whatever reason, that's what the zone plan calls for. I think for various reasons that hasn't happened in this location. Primarily, I think it's because there's just not enough rooftops and not enough density in this area to support those types of uses. Those permitted uses include antique shops, art stores, artist studios, hair salons, bookstores, things of those nature, which really has never happened in this particular zone or in this particular location. But the zone does also allow for some other uses that could be compatible to the uses that are being proposed by Mr. Almond. So he would like to keep those uses available and not be restricted to just what one may define as a contractor's warehouse or office. So he would like to have some flexibility as the economy changes or market conditions change, to make sure that this property can be supported and be viable for a long time. Getting back to the site plan, you can see that we have one main access driveway with some parking stalls located along, and then we have 2 components of stormwater management basin located at the front of the site. Of course, the topography does slope from the rear to the front, and that is why the stormwater management basins are located in the front portion of the site. We are required to widen the road in accordance with county standards. So we are proposing curb along the front of the site. We are asking for a waiver of sidewalk along the front of the site, and the applicant would, of course, have to make the contribution to the pedestrian safety fund. Just by a little quirk of interest, we were required to obtain a certificate of filing from the Pinelands, even though the subject property is outside of the Pinelands management area. The Pinelands now has decided that their limits extend to the opposite side right of way, not to the center lines of streets, which they used to take jurisdiction over. So we did have to get a certificate of filing from the Pinelands for the road widening that we have to complete for the application, and we did obtain that certificate of filing. Anthony, go to the next exhibit, please.
Can I just stay with that one for a second? That one too, Grant. There's an outer rectangle and an interior rectangle. Does that suggest that everything is within the setback lines and both variances other than sign?
Correct. The building setback lines shown on the plan. The side yard setback line is shown there. I believe the front setback line is right there. We are not seeking relief on any of the setbacks. And we are maintaining a 50-foot buffer along the eastern property line, since the property does adjoin a residential use and residential zone. So Anthony, if you can just go to A3 next real quick, I'll just run through the rest of the exhibits real quick. A3 is just a landscaping plan. It really just shows the site plan with the elements of landscaping that are proposed. Landscaping at the front of the site, some shade trees. Mr. Peters did point out the need for us to provide a 10-foot landscape buffer along the western property line. Currently, our plan does not show any landscaping along that west property line, but we will add that to satisfy his comment about that particular item. Anthony, you can move to the next exhibit, please. And finally, A4 is just a preliminary elevations of the building. You can see that this would be a, what we term a pre-engineered building, gable end roof, access bays on the front of the building. The height of the building is 18.5 feet to the eaves, and we get about 23 feet to the midpoint of the gable, which is the standard for building height definition in Jackson Township. And the permitted building height is, I think it's the permitted building height is 35 feet. So we'll be well below the permissible building height. This of course is a preliminary architectural plan. This plan does only show 4 overhead doors. We're going to be having 5 overhead doors to allow for the 3 spaces for Mr. Almond's business, and then 2 spaces for tenants. As we
Graham, if I may, through the chair, the office space, you indicated 1,000 square feet. Is that going to be a 2-story layout or a single story?
One-story office. No mezzanine proposed, just one story office. So Mr. Almond talked about his specific business and some of his day-to-day operations. I've touched on some of the particulars of the site plan, and the outdoor storage. I know is always an item that has to be addressed and has to be rectified with this board. But I think we've provided information on what is intended for the outdoor storage that is proposed on site. In my opinion, this site is well suited to the proposed development, given its location in a commercial zone, direct access to a county highway, proximity to Route 195, and also its location, close to other commercial uses and in close proximity to that ATV park, which is also a commercial use that, I think some folks would not want to have houses next to that ATV park. Of course, there is some history with this application in that the board offered a prior approval for a landscaping contractor. That use was much more intense than the proposed use that we're here for tonight. If the board members who were around at that time recall, there was discussion with the prior approval that really related to a parade of trucks leaving the site at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and there was a lot of discussion and a lot of concerns about that. And again, as Mr. Almond had already testified, this business is not that type of not that type of application. His business has nowhere near that level of intensity. Our traffic engineer will give you some details on the numbers, but just so the board understand, this is not the same level of intensity. Although the site design is very similar to that which was previously approved, this is nowhere near the level of intensity as previously discussed. As to conformance to the master plan, this application has an obligation to show that it satisfies goals or objectives of the master plan. And just a couple of points to offer testimony. In the master plan talks about goals and objectives. One of the key goals, as quoted, a key goal is to work towards a balanced community. The housing stock is now more balanced and meeting needs. Commercial and industrial development needs to be expanded to meet local demands. And this application certainly satisfies that test. As to community vision, the master plan talks about Jackson Township continuing to evolve into a well-balanced community that provides a diversity of residential opportunities, a community with commercial areas capable of serving the local and regional populations, a community which with services that satisfy the levels of service demanded by the population. You heard Mr. Almond talk about how his business serves the local population and the local community in that, about half of this town is on septic system, and certainly this is a necessary business in this location. As to land use plan element, there are 3 goals that are discussed. One is to provide quality residential neighborhoods and support the economic development of the community. I believe this application with a new commercial development, a commercial rateable, satisfies that particular goal. Second point is to provide economic development opportunities in areas that are well suited for such development that would increase the local employment opportunities and improve the rateable base of the township. Mr. Almond spoke about his desire to stay in Jackson Township, to keep his business here, and maybe it'll even grow in the future. But this application certainly satisfies the test for promoting economic development. The third goal is to provide for commercial development to serve both local and regional needs, commensurate with the demands of the market based on reliable and innovative market strategies. And again, similar to the other 2 goals, this is a local business that serves the local community, which I believe satisfies that goal. As to items identified in the municipal land use law, there are at least 2 that are clearly advanced by this application. One is to promote public health, safety, and general welfare by providing a service that is needed for proper maintenance of residential and commercial properties. So I believe this application advances that purpose of safety and public health. Second is to provide for adequate light, air, and open space based upon its low intensity of development and conformance to applicable environmental laws. Building coverage of 4% is proposed, where 25% is allowable. Impervious coverage of 19% is proposed, where 60% is allowable in this particular zone. So I believe that the project satisfies those tests, advances the purposes of zoning, and advances the purposes of the municipal land use law. As to bulk variances, I believe there are only 2 bulk variances requested with the application, unless Mr. Peters identified any other, but I think there are only 2. One is to permit a freestanding sign in the NC zone where a sign is not permitted. My opinion, the sign is required for public safety to provide adequate identification of the proposed business and safety to any approaching motorists. And secondly, along the same line is the area of the freestanding sign. Ordinance allows 25 square feet. We have 60 square feet proposed. I believe that's a reasonable size to provide adequate identification, again, for motorists. We do have the sign set back 25 feet from the right-of-way line in accordance with ordinance requirements for that. So as I had discussed, in my opinion, this application does satisfy statutory requirements for grant of the use variance, since it will advance several stated goals of the master plan. It will not propose any significant detriment to the public good. It will not propose any significant detriment to the zone plan or the ordinance that's in effect, and it does not propose any significant impact to the community.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Grant, can we have more testimony on the sign, please? Is it going to be backlit, LED?
No, I don't think we're proposing the sign to be backlit. I don't think there's any need for the sign to be backlit. The operation would be a daytime operation, so I don't think there's any need for the sign to be backlit.
Mr. Hill?
So I think Graham in his engineering testimony went over a lot of the comments in our January 31st, 2022 letter. Just I want to point out to the board's attention a few comments or get some clarification. The plan that there's a note on the plan that indicates that the stormwater basins will be owned and maintained by the property owner. Therefore, there will be no maintenance responsibilities by the town. The proposed grading design for the project does not adversely impact adjacent properties
In fact, as Graham indicated, the property grades from the north towards the south, and they're capturing and conveying and managing all the stormwater runoff as a result of this project on their property. The stormwater management basins incorporate both detention and infiltration methods for managing the stormwater runoff. Both test pits and permeability testing of those soils have been performed, and it indicates that they've maintained the adequate 2-foot separation between the bottom of the basin and seasonal high water table, and the permeability testing results and the appropriate safety factors have been built into the basin design. The lighting plan indicates that on-site lighting is to automatically be turned off at 9 p.m. And the lighting plan provides adequate site lighting along the access drive and along the front of the building and property line. And site lighting is not proposed along the rear of the property within the location of the stockpile areas. And they're based on the photometric layouts and the point-to-point analysis for the lighting plan. There does not appear to be any light spillage off of the property onto adjacent properties. There are some minor comments regarding some detailing, further detailing required on the stormwater management outlet structure. We did make a recommendation to change one of the pipe types due to the truck traffic on the main driveway and the limited cover on top of it. But overall, the stormwater management report and the design is designed to meet and exceed the DEP's BMP and township ordinance requirements for stormwater runoff reduction factors for the 2, 10, and 100-year storm events.
Thank you. Ernie, you want to comment on the bulks, the 2 bulks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant requests 2 variances. One is to have a sign, which is a practical matter. Mr. McFarland indicated safety, a practicality of knowing where the site is seems a reasonable request. The size of the sign, given the speed limit along the street, seems reasonable. We would ask that the site plan and architectural plans be reconciled to make sure that the height of the sign meets the ordinance requirements, as they're not asking for any height relief.
Any other planning issues that you see?
Pardon?
Any other planning issues?
Are there any signs proposed for the building?
There are none proposed at this time. If any are proposed, they would conform to ordinance requirements.
That's it for now. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you.
Ernie, if I could just jump, you had a couple other points I just wanted to get on the record very quick. Your report, of course, talked about the height of the materials to be stored. So we agree that nothing's going to exceed 10 feet in stored height. There was no question about that. I think you also asked about the number of parking spaces. We only have 13 parking spaces shown on the plan right now, where 15 are required. We'll provide a couple additional along the striped spaces along the building to get to the 15. We don't want to ask for any relief on the number of parking spaces. And then Ernie, you had also asked about you had pointed out the height of the light poles. Currently, we had put 30-foot poles on here, which exceed the principal building height, which is not permitted by the ordinance. We'll revise those lights down so they do not exceed that requirement. So we're not asking for that relief.
Thank you.
Through the chair. Graham, do you expect that the freestanding sign is going to replicate what your design is on the plan? Or are there going to be tenant spaces on the sign as well?
Yes, if there are, yes, we would like to reserve the sign to have the ability to reflect tenant identification.
Very good, thanks.
Any other questions from board members to this witness? You got one?
Yeah. Mr. McFarland, the applicant testified that he would like to reserve the right to not only lease up to 2 bays, but also potentially lease outdoor space. At least to some extent, that's what I heard. Would that be separate, or would, if any tenant requires outdoor storage, would the outdoor storage be in the areas demarked on the site plan.
Right, Anthony, maybe just go back to A2 real quick. We could just talk about that for a second. And Mr. Allman, maybe jump in here if I misrepresent anything. But my understanding is you can see our plan shows right now an area identified here with this dash line and then this text, which called out gravel truck and equipment parking area. My understanding is that that area, may also be available to tenants to utilize for their truck or equipment storage, in combination with Mr. Allman also using that space.
But that would not be rented separately. In other words, a tenant would be renting a bay as well, or would it be separate?
And along those lines, there's 1,000 square feet of office space. When a tenant does occupy a bay, will he also get office space that'll be cordoned off for his use?
So I think
Wait,
the answer
can
is,
you repeat that out loud because you really can't.
On the microphone.
I think the answer to that question is yes, a tenant would have the availability of having some office space as well.
That's correct. But office space within the designated office space on the plan, or they're going to?
On the plan.
Okay, so if there are, say, 3 tenants, then we'll have to divide up areas within that 1,000 square feet.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, no other questions from professionals? Any board members have questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, James?
just one question on, again, with the outside storage and a tenancy here. From what I gather from the testimony is that the applicant is proposing to have, I don't know if the word tenant is correct, but to have someone utilize the area for purposes of storage and not occupy part of the building. And is there any proposal for controlling the number and extent of the potential users? Again, I hate to use the word tenant, but it's more like a license, I guess. But the point is there any proposal to control the number of users and the extent of the use of the property for those users? Is there any proposals there? I mean, could he have 15 people come in and start storing things and still have 2 or 2 bays usable for tenants? Where's the control?
It would probably be just vehicles parking there. It wouldn't be any outside storage. It would be summer equipment. So if they had a truck and trailer, they wanted to park there with construction equipment, they'd have a gravel area to park in.
So the outside storage you're talking about is just for equipment?
Yes.
Okay, it wouldn't be any type of
Wouldn't be
materials like
piles of lumber
none of that?
or windows or, stockpiles of, I don't know.
So the only storage that you're proposing there is the type of storage that you would use for your business. It'd be sand, gravel, things of that nature.
Pipe and manhole castings.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Okay, so you have another witness that you want to produce. So you have the
John Ray, the traffic engineer.
traffic. Yeah, bring him up. We'll have
John.
him sworn in.
Mr. Ray, thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Kindly give us your full name, spell your last affiliation, and through the chairman, your credentials.
John Ray, REA, a principal with McDonough and Ray Associates, a professional engineer that will testify on traffic tonight.
John, you just explain your
Wait a minute,
methodology.
I didn't. I accept his credentials.
Thank you, Mr. Najarian.
Well, I think he was going to add for a little bit additional.
Your
credentials.
methodology and how you approach this and what
Well-
you found in your analysis.
We prepared a fully detailed traffic impact analysis dated March 16th, 2021. It involved making several visits to the site Talking to Mr. Allman about the operation of his business, conducting traffic counts at the intersection of West Veterans Highway and Hawken Road, which is the four-way stop intersection, which is just to the west of the property, making traffic volume projections for the for not only Mr. Allman's business, but for a possible tenant based on the size of the building, the amount of square footage of office space and warehouse space. And after listening to Mr. Allman's testimony with regard to his business, I can tell you, I think the projections that we made are pretty accurate and would include another potential tenant or two. We are projecting 16 peak hour trips during the morning peak hour, 18 peak hour trips during the afternoon peak hour, based on the size of the building and the breakdown of office and warehouse space. And I think that fits in pretty well with the 15 parking spaces that are being proposed. If anything, we probably overestimated the traffic a little bit. We projected the traffic volumes to a design year of 2031. That's in accordance with Ocean County Planning Board protocol. We included background traffic growth for the area for the two roads in question. And we conducted level of service capacity analyses for the site driveway to West Veterans Highway and for the off-site intersection of West Veterans Highway and Hawken Road. All of the traffic movements for the 2031 design year will operate at level of service B or better. We're fortunate we are in an area of the township out at the western end of the township where it's pretty much a rural area, not a lot of traffic. So the levels of service will all be very good. We also looked at the site plan with respect to the circulation. Mr. McFarland has testified to that in detail. This is going to be a typical specialty trade contractor type of business. And we believe the single driveway to West Veterans High will operate safely and efficiently. The site distance is good at that location. The county has requested a widening along the property frontage to 25 feet from the center line, if I'm not mistaken, and also a property dedication to 33 feet from the center line. And we've taken care of that. That's it.
Ernie, you got any cross-examination?
John, the left turn movement out of the site during peak periods, what's the traffic generated by this site and or the level of service for folks making left-hand turns out of the site or left-hand turns into the site?
The left-hand turn out of the site would be a B level of service. The left-hand turn into the site would be an A level of service.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, so that concludes your,
Other than a 1 minute close to say, I think we've met all of the mileposts.
Hang
We
on to
think.
your closing until you hear the.
Oh, we got it. We might have concerned citizens. Thank you.
yeah. So I want to open up to the board first, if anybody had any questions.
Mr. Chairman, just one.
Yeah, James, go ahead.
Mr. Ray, you testified that the type of business is a specialty type of business and therefore has does not have a negative impact on traffic. But how do you square that with potential tenants that are unidentified?
I square it simply, Mr. Hurley, because of the size of the building, the amount of space that will be left for a potential tenant. There's no real conceivable way that with the space that's left in the building and what Mr. Allman is not going to use, that we can get any kind of a real intensive traffic use in here, given the number of parking spaces, the amount of space that'll be left in the building and on the property. It really can't support an intense use as far as traffic is concerned.
Is it fair to say then that the control will be based on the size of the building and the number of parking spaces available?
I think that's a big part of it, yes. The size of the property, the size of the building, the parking spaces. The ITE, our professional organization, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, does have a trip generation manual that includes data for specialty trade contractors, which fits this category very nicely. And I think those numbers that I gave you before as far as trip generation are pretty accurate, if not a little bit on the high side.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to open it up to the public. Anybody care to wish to speak for or against? Come on up to the microphone, get sworn in, tell us where you live.
Hang on, each of you, just so I understand, each of you are gonna sort of talk simultaneously?
Speak together.
Okay, which is fine. So each of you kindly raise your right hand. Do you, each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions or comments you're gonna direct to the board or the applicant will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And each of you separately give us your full name, spell your last, and your address.
Hello, my name is Peter Perina, and this is my wife Jane.
Okay,
We resided
can you spell your last name
Perrina
and your address, please?
1352 West Veterans Highway.
Thank you.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, we bought our home, which is the rear property that is abuts to the east, directly to the east of their property. We closed about a year ago, March 2nd. We did our due diligence and we knew that the neighbor next door was neighborhood commercial. I applaud these gentlemen. They did a fine job for describing a industrial commercial property, not a neighborhood commercial property. When I did my due diligence, I looked at all the resolutions and whatnot for Jackson Township. And everything that it states, there's a lot of red flags. I don't think anything here that they described conforms to neighborhood commercial whatsoever. Not one. The last applicant, you had more questions for him about outdoor storage than you do for this. This is, they're calling for outdoor storage in a commercial area where I assume that's not allowed. What's being described is a contractor's warehouse and yard. It's not permitted in in a neighborhood commercial. This application, it said a 35-foot high metal pole barn, a warehouse with outdoor storage. Where my house is located, as soon as I walk out my front door, I will see everything on their property. As soon as I walk out my back door to enjoy my yard, I'll be seeing stockpiles of dirt and sand. Now, there was nothing being done or said about any kind of buffer or anything that would appease his two neighbors who abut to his eastern side of their property. As far as noise goes and trucks going in and out, they're proposing their business is 12-hour, 7 a.m., 7 p.m., 7 days a week. You know the area very well. Matter of fact, I'm the closest resident to the facility that was just approved. So I listen to ATV quads all day long. Again, I'm concerned about the truck noise, the diesel noise, the stockpile of the dirt, the above ground diesel tank that is proposed. All of this, again, not conforming to neighborhood commercial. And I'd like to ask a question. Apparently I heard that a prior application was approved. To me, that seems like it's null and void. Is that correct?
Don't really understand the question.
Like this is separate.
This is a brand new application.
Brand new
Right, so why
application.
should the other application have anything to do with
It
it?
may or may not. They made their argument.
Okay.
Okay.
But your point is also well taken.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. Again, the business that is being proposed on his website is industrial, commercial, and residential. As far as the look of the building, when I think of neighborhood commercial, I think of something very aesthetically looking, a new building, a doctor's office, a lawyer's office. I mean, this is the This is your entrance into town, into the Jackson Township. Does it have to look like an industrial site when you come into town on that particular, coming in from Plumstead Township? I think it changes the whole demographics of the area. There's nothing near what they're describing, at least 2 or 3 miles from that parcel. Yeah. It should be an industrial, what they describe as an industrial zone. And also, the applicant described that he was going to lease out to businesses that conform to neighborhood commercial. So that's, to me, that seems a little tricky to me with their application. Again, no outside storage. I know it's not allowed. They have these dirt piles and sand piles and whatnot. They have to be maintained. So I guess they'll have a machinery that does that. Diesel machines that have to maintain these, and that makes a lot of noise. He also mentioned that they wanted to do a similar business, something like a pump truck. I don't know if you guys are familiar with pump trucks, but they have turbines. When you hear turbines, it sounds like a jet engine going off, and that would be directly next door to my property. Again, no mention of any kind of buffer or a burn or anything. What I'll be looking at is barbed wire and a chain link fence with barbed wire, and directly looking at the whole site. Traffic safety is an issue, I believe. You got school buses. It's a 50-mile-an-hour zone directly right in front of the driveway. There's a lot of accidents on that corner, as you probably all are well known, where the blinking light is at Hawken and West Veterans Highway. We're concerned about the smell of diesel fuel and hydraulic fuel from their machinery, the noise of the downshifting and entering the property, with the trucks and trailers and whatnot. It's all loud vehicles. And also the loading and unloading of outdoor storage concrete pipes. Let's see what else we got here. I mean, I think we've pretty much covered everything of all my concerns, but again, there's a lot of red flags here. I think it far supersedes what is neighborhood commercial.
Thank you for coming forward. Did your wife want to say anything?
No, I think
Okay.
we covered everything.
All right, thank you for coming
Wait,
forward.
hang on. So, Mr. Doyle, do you have any questions?
Mr. Pereira, do I have that? Farina, in your due diligence and looking at all of the past approval, as you said before you bought, did you find the approval that was given to Good Mowing?
No.
So you didn't find that in your due diligence. When Mr. McFarland mentioned the ATV that was recently approved by this board on the property behind yours, did you find that?
Yeah, we knew about that.
You got
We
notice?
spoke with those people, yes.
When you said you spoke with those people, the applicant?
Yeah.
Did you come to the board to object to the use
No, we did
variance?
No, we didn't object.
Anthony, if I could have Exhibit 2, B2, I think.
And I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was able to bring some stuff in to show you gentlemen, but next time I can.
Your lot is do we have one that shows the lot lines?
The aerial.
I'll take A1. Your lot is the flag lot, that is the one with the narrow,
Correct,
and the house is in the rear.
correct.
Do you know what the side setback is along your side?
50, 30 feet, I believe.
You were right the first time, sir. It was 50 feet.
Okay.
And are you aware that that 50 feet, which you see on the aerial, is currently fully wooded? All of that wooding would remain? Were you aware of that?
I just heard it tonight.
Okay. So when you say there won't be a buffer, that would be inaccurate now, given the fact that there's going to be a 50-foot strip of existing woodlands.
Most of the woodlands there are all dead. I'll be seeing everything from my master bedroom windows, which is right on that elevation.
How high are the trees? How high are the trees?
The trees, most of them are dead, maybe 20 feet, 25 feet, 30 feet. It varies.
Okay.
And there's no evergreen or anything like that. It's all oak or maples that are dying.
You mentioned barbed wire and chain link fencing. Is there anything in the plans that reflected that?
Yeah. It says right in the plans. Chain link fence and barbed wire. I mean, I think you gentlemen should know that.
Yes, that was frankly left over from the previous plan that we had prepared. We're not proposing barbed wire with this
Again, the previous
application.
plan
Just
is null and void and expired.
Understood, but that was just an error on our point, just keeping that tag on the fence. We're not proposing barbed wire fence, just so you understand. And as Mr. Doyle was
So
trying
what-
to,
Clarify it then, though. What fence, if any, are you proposing?
we're proposing a 6-foot-high chain link fence. Anthony, maybe go to A2 and we'll just run through that very, very quick. So everybody understands. What we have proposed for fencing is we have an aluminum fence proposed here along the front part of the site. And then around the remainder of the site, we have a chain link fence proposed, 6-foot-high chain link fence proposed pretty much where I'm showing the laser pointer. Your property is this lot here. It's lot 15, I believe, which is a flag lot. So the house is located back in here. And you have a small strip that goes out to West Veterans Highway. What we have proposed is we have a 50-foot buffer here that's being maintained. Then we have the chain link fence to serve two purposes. One, to serve for security for the for the business, and two, to also help preserve that buffer that will not be touched by this application. When we designed this project, we took into consideration how it would function relative to the neighbors and the adjoining uses, and we located the building on the eastern part of the site, and most of the activity of the site would take place on the western portion of the site. So we tried to keep the activity as far from possible from the residential zone, which the zone boundary is along the common property line. And again, we're proposing a 50-foot buffer along that entire property line.
With some trees?
Correct. And we would certainly agree to walk that buffer during construction with the township engineer. If there are bare spots, if there happens to be spots where a lot of trees are dying, we would agree to supplement that buffer with additional plantings. Now, I understand that's a vague commitment, but we would agree to abide by whatever recommendations the township engineer or the forester may give us at that time.
That would be for the two, if you're going to buff for the two buildings, my home and the home in front of me, you're talking about 600 feet.
The entire length of the property, we're proposing to retain that entire vegetation along that entire property line. And based upon your concerns, your input tonight, we're also agreeing that we'll provide a field-specific investigation during construction. And if that buffer needs to be upgraded, we'll agree to upgrade it.
And may I just add to that before you ask the question? That agreement to add to that, to enhance it, would be based on the sole discretion of the township engineer or the forester.
That's correct.
I would, well, if that's the case, well, that's not, I mean, you would have to put in something like green giants that go 40, 50 feet high, 600 feet long. With at least a 5 or 6 year warranty from the applicant on maintaining.
Well, there's performance bonds for what anything would be proposed. I know Mr. Peters.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. The first comment from the resident about putting 40 or 50-foot trees in, that's not the intent of the buffer ordinance. Well, I understand that there may be site issues. That's not what the ordinance requires. The ordinance doesn't require them to put a 50-foot green screen 50 feet off the property. It requires them to put a buffer in accordance with the ordinance. If there are bare spots, the township forester or township engineer walks the site, marks them out, and they go and they put evergreens in. They don't put deciduous trees, which is generally the stand of trees that's out there. Deciduous trees in the winter are easy to see through. So in the areas where we have development, and there are areas where we have seasonally bare areas, we supplement them with evergreens. It's done all over town. Quite frankly, it's a standard. The offer that's often made is, where do you want the trees? You put the trees on the property line that's common to the neighbor, or we can put them up against the fence that's 50 foot into the buffer. And again, sometimes that's done in coordination with the neighbors, or the forester simply walks the 50-foot strip and says, these are areas that are bare and don't meet the intent of the ordinance, and they get filled in. With regards to the survivability, there are performance guarantees that run with the property. When the site is fully completed and the developer asks to get taken off his performance bonds, which sometimes can take the length of the construction of the project plus a year or so. When they go to get off their performance guarantees, they're required to post a 2-year maintenance guarantee. And generally, the 2-year maintenance guarantee guarantees the sufficient growth of any landscape improvements. So I can't say it's 5 or 6 years. I can say it's the length of the development of the project. When he gets his CO, and when he's done and he's operating the site, when he asks to get off his performance guarantee, he has to go to the township engineer and the township forester. They go out and make sure everything's sufficient. If he passes muster there and his performance bond is released, he gets placed on a maintenance guarantee for 2 more years. After that 2-year period elapses, he can make a request to get off his maintenance bond. The same thing happens again. The township engineer or the township forester will visit the site 2 years after the performance guarantee has been released to determine whether or not the maintenance bond can be released. So there are safeguards in place that's part of not only the Jackson Township Code, but the municipal land use law as well.
Thank you, Ernie.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Ernie, what are the size of the evergreens they put in at inception? If you understand.
Generally speaking, of planning, somewhere between 6, 8, or 10 foot in height. If it was a barren area, they'd be put in on spacing probably 10 foot. If it was a bare 50-foot buffer, you'd probably put a staggered row. So you'd put one row 10 foot apart, and you'd put another row 10 foot in front of it, staggered 5 feet. So that in theory, there'd be a tree every 5 feet as you looked at it from the outside. And that's simply to allow growth, because some evergreens can get to be 30, 40, 50 feet tall with tree spreads of 30 feet. But after 15, 20, 25 years, sometimes the bottom branches come out. So what we want to do is make sure that they're not on top of each other, because they'll kill each other. So these are sort of straightforward standards that the municipalities been using. I mean, we are a Tree City USA community. It's not like we sort of do this haphazardly. So there are standards that are used that are proven out in the field. And generally speaking, if concerned neighbors want to meet out in the field with the municipal officials, they'll do that. So the buffer's required. It's not because the neighbors got up. He's required to do it regardless. So most of what Mr. McFarland testified to would happen whether the residents had a concern or not. They're required to provide the buffer. The buffer is provided based upon the landscape plans and the field conditions.
The buffer sounds all well and good, But in reality, if they go out there and you're looking for an immediate obscurity of the offending site, are you best suited to put in the tallest and widest trees that you possibly can immediately to get an immediate buffer? Is that something that's in the discretion of the
I'm not
engineer?
sure our land use ordinance requires an immediate buffer. I think the board can inquire of the applicant, their willingness to do something that would help increase the visible screen that it appears the board's looking to get. But from a land use ordinance perspective, there's not a requirement to make it a solid wall of green on day one.
Thank you.
Okay, so where are we at? We
So-
don't have a barbed wire fence. No barbed wire. And the client is willing to put in, or has to put in, a 50-foot buffer of, let's say, white pines that grow fast. I think that this is a good, I'm glad that you brought you forward, came up and you discussed this, and we're getting things done.
Okay, besides that, in your land use regulations for an industrial zone, it says contractor office, showroom, garage, warehouse, shop, provided however that all materials and equipment are stored within a completely enclosed building. Why is that the exception here for neighborhood commercial? It's not, anything is supposed to be visible from any resident, regardless of buffer or what. And as far as the sign goes, they said it's for safety reasons. Well, then why isn't it lit up for nighttime? Nighttime safety is null and void.
So that's a question, Mr. McFarland.
Well, yes, I had testified to our opinion that, these businesses will not be utilized at night and certainly not accessed by the general public at nighttime hours. So I don't feel there's any need to have the sign illuminated. We're trying to minimize the impact and keep the, keep the impact of lights, down. So I don't believe there's any benefit of illuminating this particular sign.
Okay, so thank you for coming forward. I appreciate your input. I
I'm
usually only
finished.
allow 5 minutes, but you've been over that, but you're the only one, so they're gonna take care of this. All right?
I'm a little hard of hearing, so I didn't hear what you said.
I said, let them think about this for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I didn't close. Anybody else care to come forward? Closing the public session. Thank you. Okay, in closing,
Briefly, I think we've met the legal standards. I would throw in that Wickatunk versus Marlboro said sanitary sewers facility, because it's public, could be inherently beneficial. There is a real need for this kind of facility.
Repeat
The
that.
site was Wickatunk versus Marlboro.
Uh-huh.
No, we won't go into the law. On the facts, we've, I think, proven through Graham's testimony for a D variance. I think through his engineering side, we've met the standards very precisely as to showing the site and how it will operate appropriately. John Ray made it clear with testimony about A and B level of service. We've not sought any bulk variances. We're only covering 4% of the land rather than the 25% that's allowed. I think under all circumstances, given the board's past fact finding and the facts in this case, the application should be granted, subject to the conditions we acknowledged and accepted, as well as those imposed by the professionals, and particularly the last one about the forester giving notices to our neighbor to make the inspection with us and the forester. Thank you very much.
okay, any deliberations with board members? It's up to us now.
Chairman, may I?
James, go.
A question for Mr. McFarland, if I can, before I go any further. Ms. McFarland, there was testimony of a prior approval on this property, which is now expired. Can you tell me, before my time, so can you tell me exactly what was approved?
What was approved at that time was an 8,000 square foot building for a landscape and property maintenance contractor. That use was proposed to be more intensive than this application. They generated much more traffic, had many more employees. That business, I believe it may have had a small retail component. I'm not certain about that fact. I think that went back and forth a couple of times. The site design was generally similar to this. We kept the building in the same location. And overall,
Has the zoning changed since that approval?
it has not.
And why is there an expiration?
Yes, I have to ask the governor.
The governor?
That, I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't write the laws for how long the approval is valid for.
I guess my question is, if this were denied, would that use that was previously approved still be viable?
My understanding is that the use variance would still be in effect. However, the site plan does have times associated with its approval.
Right, so the use just goes with the land. It would still be permissible under that variance.
I agree with that statement.
Okay. And then secondly, just out of curiosity, I wonder if you can address, obviously, in my opinion, it's not inherently beneficial use. However, I know there was just a cite to a case, and I know that case, and it doesn't really apply to septic contractors. However, can you help me out here? Can you reconcile the grant of this variance with no action taken by the governing body to amend the zoning in the NC zone, considering it in 2021, there was an amendment, which I think is found in 255, section 57.1 and .2, which now allows warehousing, but not in the NC zone. How can I reconcile that?
If I understand, Judge, the suggestion is that because the governing body said you can have warehousing in the NC zone, and they didn't at that time add to the warehouse, they said there were areas for where there could be warehousing, but warehousing wouldn't be appropriate in the NC zone. So that would limit our abilities here to get this use variance. I would suggest that given the general nature of warehousing in terms of being tens of thousands of square foot, and that was what was authorized, you have here, 7,000 feet of warehousing on a site that is 4+ acres, and which by warehousing, we're covering maybe 3.5% of the space. It is a legitimate opportunity to have all of the other goals of the zoning ordinance and the master plan met as outlined by Mr. McFarland.
So Mr. Doyle, thank you for your argument. Mr. McFarland.
Sorry, I can't hear.
I said to Mr. Doyle, thank you for the argument. Mr. McFarland, as a licensed planner in the state of New Jersey, can you answer that question as it was directed to you?
Well, I believe that we provided direct testimony that indicated how this application is consistent with goals and objectives of the master plan. That's the test that has to be passed for grant of a variance, for grant of this D1 variance. We showed that there's no significant negative impact. We showed it conforms to the goals and objectives of the master plan. We showed that it promotes economic development and economic growth, which are all stated goals and purposes of the master plan.
Okay. So it's still left up us, the board here. We need a motion.
Sorry, I can't hear someone speaking.
Yes, I know our statement of operations indicated 7 to 7, and Mr. Almond just coming forward, I guess, to
Yeah,
confirm.
that's pretty much, normal operations are 7 to 7. There are on occasion that the truck has to leave earlier to go to Trap Rock to get stone. And that truck doesn't happen that often. We start, pretty much start 7:30 and we're done at 3:30 on a normal operation. There are occasions that the truck could leave at 5:30 in the morning, and that would be 1 or 2 trucks at that time.
May I follow up with that? Just so sometimes, I don't remember if it was that previous application or not, there had been some talk of some restrictions for site operations, like the beeping of backing up trucks, that sort of thing. Not necessarily exiting the site.
No on-site operations of equipment running, loading trucks or anything. There will be no operations of trucks being loaded. Just
So
the truck started and leaving the site.
So let me ask the question as a layperson, I apologize. You have this dirt that has to get loaded. And some of this equipment that helps, the back, you're gonna laugh at me, the backhoes that put the
loader,
put the
right.
dirt to load it into whatever truck.
Yeah.
If
But that
you're
would be,
backing
that
it
would
up,
be
that
normal,
beeps.
that would be
Let
normal
me
operation
finish
days.
so that the record is clear. You're interrupting me. I know you know the answer already, but I gotta lay it out. We talked over each other. So now you understand the question. If you back up, there's gonna be beeping at 7 a.m. That may be more disturbing, and he's shaking his head, yes. That may be more disturbing arguably than simply the trucks leaving. Now, go ahead.
The
So,
majority of the loading would be done from 7:30 and later, 7:30 in the morning. I said a truck could leave the site to go get loaded at Trap Rock 2 hours away.
Ma'am, you can't do that, ma'am. Can't do that. So my question is, and I don't know the noise, I should know the noise ordinance time. Is it 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock that they can normally start operation? If you know construction operation.
It's 7 o'clock.
It is 7.
Yes.
Okay. So the noise ordinance is a generally applicable ordinance. All right, so your testimony would be that there'd be no, and that's similar to the good mowing and the other landscaping thing. You would have no of those type of loading and unloading operations. That wouldn't start till 7:30.
That's correct.
Regardless. Okay.
Yes.
No, it's not 7. My operation is 5 days a week, once in a while on a Saturday, depending on weather. But I've been running my business for 38 years. We pretty much run 5 days. Yeah, we pretty much run 5 days a week, but I can't limit myself on the building.
Okay, so we're at the deliberation to come up with a motion in this regard. Any more questions? Have any more questions, anybody? Okay, so let's look at this. It's up to us now. Deliberation, that's the word. Trying to get it out after my bedtime.
We never really touched on what the homeowner mentioned, that nothing should be stored outside in this commercial. We never, that they shouldn't see anything outside. We never discussed that further. They never responded to that point. Things are going to be stored outside, but under this ordinance, they shouldn't be. Is that what I understand correctly?
They require a variance for that. That's what they're asking for.
Okay,
That's
so
one of the elements of their variance request. You have questions about that?
no. I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly what
What they're asking
okay,
for.
what they're asking for. Okay.
I need a motion.
I'll put forth a motion to approve the application as submitted with the various requirements for the bulks and the other.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
All right, so we got a James second. Roll call, please.
Can I make a comment before we have a roll call?
Go ahead.
Just very quickly. This is a tough application, quite frankly. And I was really interested in what Mr. Perina had spoken about being an adjoining neighbor. But I think what he misses here, and the reason I brought it up, is that there was a use variance previously granted for a landscaping business, which is, and could be, and probably is, a more intense use than the use that we're talking about here. People are in and out all of the time, contractors moving in and out all of the time. You'll have all kinds of storage on the property, which include plantings, decorative rocks. You can have soil posted. You can have other types of materials stored on site for fertilizer, which sometimes does not smell that good. So it could be a more intense use. This application is less intense, and quite frankly, it serves a specific purpose. It really does. Not to sound like a lawyer here, but there is a case that everyone cites. It's called Sika versus the Township of Wall Zoning Board, and that was a case where a doctor had proposed an application for brain, I forget exactly what the term was, but it was brain rehabilitation. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made an interesting statement. It may have been in passing, but I think it had has somewhat to do with this case. And that is, for anyone who had to have brain damage and brain rehabilitation, the closest place they can go is in New York, not New Jersey. And that indicates that, even though it was an inherently beneficial use, which this is not, it indicated that there is a need for something which very well supports the application. And here I had Mr. Almond testify about the types of need about Jackson Township. More than 50%, I forget the number, is on septic system, upper freehold. Near 100% is up in service by septic systems. And our master plan proposes as a goal to benefit the community, not only the local community, but to satisfy a regional need. So although I was kind of on the fence on this application, I have to say it serves a specific purpose. I accept the testimony of Mr. Farland that relates to the positive criteria. The negative criteria, if we need to address it, the master plan does speak to supporting regional needs. And this is a type of application you don't see every day that does support the regional type of need. And as far as impact on the community, without this application, the impact is even more negative. So that this reduces the negativity of what is previously approved and could be established here with a site plan application. So I'm inclined to approve this application. That's why I decided to second it.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. So we got a motion and a second on the floor. I need a roll call, please.
Mr. Book,
Yes.
Ms. Fritsch,
No.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Russell? Yes. Ms. Bradley? Yes. Mr. Costanzo?
Yes.
Mr. Najarian?
Yes. Let him get You can't. I'm sorry.
One question for the other gentleman, is more concerned than you did for this application. Sounds like I understand rules here. Be in court. I got good lawyers.
Thank you. All right, next application. All right, Miguel Santana. Variance 3397. Please come forward. Let's get started. You got a half an hour. Then I go to bed.
Right, Mr. Santana, if you'd raise your right hand. Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Can you, first of all, you raise the mic a little bit so we can hear you? The mic.
Yes, I do.
All right, can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your address, please?
Miguel Santana. Santana is Santana. I live in 34 Laurelton Avenue in Jackson.
34.
Laurelton, LA.
And, sir, if I may, who's the gentleman to your left, my right?
I'm Kenneth Schlotman, professional engineer, professional planner, representing.
So, Mr. Schlotman, what, introduce
Why don't you
yourself-
take
yeah,
over?
as well.
Yes.
Thank you for raising your right hand, Mr. Schlotman. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your qualifications, just so we finish everything.
I'm a professional engineer, professional planner, state of New Jersey. I've been licensed since 1982. I've been practicing in Ocean County since 1983. I have my own practice.
Have you been in front of this board?
I've been before this board numerous times.
We accept your credentials.
Thank you very
Continue.
much.
Why don't you explain to us exactly what he wants to do?
Certainly. Mr. Santana's application is to replace the structure on a property that he has purchased. He purchased the property approximately 2 years ago. The existing structure, residential structure, is in a dilapidated condition. It no longer would support the replacement or upgrade of the structure to meet current standards. So the proposal is to replace that structure with a brand-new structure. Reason we were before this board is because the subject property is not on an improved roadway. It's on an unimproved roadway, okay? In addition to that, there are a number of variances associated with the property itself. Property is in the Forest Area 6 zone, which requires a minimum of 6 acres. The tract itself is
7.8.
Yes.
Now, did he know when he bought the property, did he know that it needed 6 acres in that area?
He did not, no. At the time that he bought the property, his intent was to upgrade the house, basically restore the house. But then it was determined that the house is not basically not livable, yes. Although at the time that he purchased the property, there were people in the house. And in other words, they were evacuated, I guess, or taken out because of the bank taking over the property.
The bank took over the property.
Apparently, yes.
He
So
didn't have a lawyer when he bought this property. He didn't get a lawyer.
the property, though it does require 6 acres, the property actually was a lot that was created as part of a minor subdivision. A minor subdivision, as called out on the survey plat that was submitted as part of the application, was filed in 2002. So my presumption is that that if the property was approved as part of a minor subdivision with an existing structure that was built in, I believe, 1939, that at the time that the lot was created, it was suitable or met with the current standards.
Where you getting this information from? So how do you know it was subdivided?
The survey that was provided to the board, the surveyor makes direct reference to the map that they pulled the information from, which talks about the subdivision. Now, the map, the survey map is note number 5 that refers to the subdivision that was created.
You know what the zone was in 2002?
I don't.
So arguably, the subdivision, well.
I wasn't a zoning officer in 2002, but based on the zone maps that I've seen over the years, this zoning has not changed. But I don't recall searching for, nor certainly didn't locate a filed map that's being referred to tonight, which may have altered my decision on having Mr. Santana here tonight, but I don't have any recollection of ever seeing a filed map, a recent filed map for this site.
Of the subdivision?
Correct.
No
I mean,
subdivision, no record of subdivision.
I didn't look for it, but 2002 seems like a very recent, even though it's 20 years ago. I don't imagine that there was a filed map that recently, but I can't contradict what the engineer is saying.
Would it be an R3? You don't know. There's no way of knowing if it was.
It would not have
R3.
been an R3.
It would not.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, without the map, all you can glean from the note on the plan is that there was a map. For all we know, the map said that the structure was in disrepair and had to be torn down. Right? We don't know. So unless you have the map in front of you, you can't make an assumption that it was legitimized. It's an argument, but it's not an argument until you see the map.
To the chair, Mr. Peters, just to clarify it in our own minds, what would the implications be if the zone was the same versus the zone not being the same? Does it make, what's the difference?
That the lot was created with the variances that relate to lot area and bulk dimensions. So at some point in time, a board of competent jurisdiction said, we're going to take a larger tract of land and divide it into smaller tracts of land. And this tract of land was created by that. And you would say that that lot at that point would either become a lot of record or a pre-existing, non-conforming, undersized lot.
As long as it was zoned the same at the time.
Correct. Again, without understanding what was on the filed plat, I can't confirm what 9 times out of 10, I suspect Mr. Schlotman's comments are correct. He doesn't have the map and I don't have the map, so we can't say it for sure.
All right, so let's move forward and we'll decide that at the end.
Certainly, I
Sorry to
appreciate.
interrupt you. I just wanted clarity.
No, and my apologies to the board because I just had the copy of the survey plat provided to me this evening, and I noticed the reference on the survey plat. The subdivision plat certainly would be available via the county clerk's office, and I would be more than happy to pull that or actually get it from the surveyor. But to continue with the application, the purpose here is to replace the dilapidated structure with a new 2-story, single-family residential structure that actually would improve on one of the aspects of the original building. While we do have a number of bulk variances associated with the lot area, the lot width, the lot depth, there is an existing side yard nonconformity with the existing structure. There's a 25-foot required side yard space, side yard setback. The proposed structure would actually align and be 25 feet off of that side yard. So we would actually be eliminating one existing nonconformity from the site. We still, of course, deal with the other bulk variances that are associated with the property, that being lot area, lot width, lot depth, and being located on an unimproved roadway.
Yes, Mr. Hill.
Okay. So I think both Ernie and I are confused at this point. The variance applicant, the plan titled Plan to Accompany Variance Application prepared by Accutech shows exactly what you said, or what you just stated, right? There's an existing building, it's going to be torn down, and a new building of similar footprint's going to be rebuilt such that it doesn't require a 25, so it doesn't require a side yard setback variance.
That's correct.
However, the architectural plan submitted shows that the house is being reconstructed on its existing footings.
And if I might point out, the architectural plan would be revised to locate it for obvious reasons. The purpose here is, say if it's a new structure that's going to be constructed, and the existing foundation would not support a new structure.
Okay, so you're rebuilt. So then I go back to, you're in the Pinelands, and the Pinelands certificate of filing that you have was based on there's the footprint being rebuilt in kind, not an existing dwelling being demolished and a new one built. So your certificate of filing isn't for what the plot plan is showing, it was for what the architectural plans were showing. The certificate of filing only indicates in it that it's for the demolition of a building. That's all it says, right? Have you?
The certificate of filing was actually obtained by Mr. Santana prior to me being involved in that.
Prior to being involved. Okay,
Yes.
so you haven't even reviewed that. You haven't looked at it.
No.
Okay.
So, Mr. Hill, based on your review of that certificate of filing, the board doesn't have jurisdiction based on the
Well-
proffer.
Let me review it again real quick.
Well,
And that's where we were both confused. Certificate of.
I guess
Go
my
ahead.
concern is the architect's plans are from October of 2020. The certificate of filing is from March of 2021. And the new engineering plans are from July of 2021. So it's obvious that the engineering plans have never been reviewed by Pinelands. Your certificate of filing predates it. So I guess someone needs to tell us what they're doing. And if they're telling us that they're not building what the architect's plans are, then they need a new certificate of filing.
Yeah, so the certificate of filing is specific to the reconstruction of a single-family dwelling within 5 years of its demolition. So what that means is it was based on the architectural plans that they were going to rebuild it on the existing footprint and not, and to your credit, you're looking to get rid of the variances or at least the side yard. So that's good, but that's not what your certificate of filing is not valid towards the plot plan or the variance plan that was submitted.
So if we were to keep the footprint, correct the engineered plan to show the proposed footprint being in the place of the existing footprint, then a certificate of filing would be valid, but we would be needing to request relief of a side yard.
You would
setback.
require a side yard setback variance for a pre-existing non-conforming condition,
Yes.
correct?
Well, and respectfully, you have to have plans that match each other because
Understood.
the plan on the footprint on the engineering drawing does
Clearly
not appear to
shows
be the footprint on the architectural drawing.
Right. Yeah, there's it's almost like.
Can I interject a question here?
Go ahead, James.
If the building is going to be demolished, why would it even be a pre-existing non-conforming use or structure? It's gone. Wouldn't it just be, here's an application to put this building on this property, subject to getting whatever he has to get from not only this board, but from Pinelands.
So
I mean, you got me totally confused here. If the building is to be destroyed, now I heard somebody say he's going to use the same foundation, but the map that I'm looking at doesn't look like it's going to be the same foundation. This one looks like a square, as opposed to that one looking like an L in a way. But if he demolishes the building, it doesn't exist anymore. So now he comes to this board and says, I need a C variance to reconstruct this home. I don't, are residential uses permitted in this zone? It's just an undersized lot?
yes,
Is
it's
Okay.
Mr. Hurley, it's
So-
permitted. However, you have to go back to the first step of any municipal application at the Pinelands is receiving a certificate of filing for proposing to do something. That's
I
the-
understand that.
right? The certificate of filing that the applicant obtained was not based on building a brand new house elsewhere on this site. It was for demoing the existing home down to the footings and rebuilding in its existing footprint. And the Pinelands specifically has allowances and exceptions in their rules to allow that, which differ from a certificate of filing for a new home to be constructed elsewhere on the site.
Okay, not to confuse matter, because I am confused. If he decides to just demolish this building and build a brand new building and does away with the side yard setbacks, things of that nature, he goes to Pinelands first, gets what he has to get, and then he comes here to get a variance for the setbacks? Or can he come here first to get the variance for the setbacks, subject to him getting approval from Pinelands?
No, it always has to start with Pinelands first.
Okay, so it goes to Pinelands, he gets that, he comes here and he simply asks for a C variance.
Correct. Any applicants within the Pinelands have to always get a certificate of filing prior to an application for anything, site plan, a single family dwelling, prior
Okay.
to a
Okay,
municipal.
then why
application.
why are we even concerned about this map? I mean, survey that I have actually shows a lot in block number for a tax map. Isn't it true that if there was a subdivision that the tax map would have been changed accordingly and designating a lot in a block?
So this is a lot of record that occurred, that appears to have occurred as a result of a subdivision from 2002. I don't think anybody's disputing that. I think it came down to whether or not, my understanding, but the conversation was, there was question as to whether or not possibly the existing non-conforming C variances were part of that subdivision and were no longer needed now. That was the discussion from my understanding.
Okay.
And I see a lot of people shaking their heads, yes. Not the
But if he
validity,
demolishes the building, it's not an issue.
not the validity of a subdivision, but whether or not the C variances were granted as part of that subdivision for this home.
And what Mr.
Let's assume they were, and he demolishes the building. Can he just make an application for a C variance?
Yes, he can.
That's my question.
All right, so you got some guidance in regards to our professionals are telling you where to go and when.
I appreciate the board and.
All right,
and the
I'm
board's
glad I gave you the
professionals.
half an hour to clean this up. So when you come back, you can explain it to your client.
I certainly will.
All right, I thank you for coming
Whoa,
forward.
okay.
You got to schedule it.
So you're going to go back and speak with your client. If you're going to rebuild on the existing footprint, you would agree, and I think we would agree that the certificate of filing is applicable. If you are going to propose what is depicted on the variance plan that was submitted by Accutech, then you agree a new certificate of filing is more than likely required.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So along those lines, before we announce carrying and then potentially carrying them, I understand that. Carrying again, may I make another couple of suggestions?
Certainly.
One would be, now that you've just been presented tonight, that's subdivision, just to whether it's not relevant or not, it may be a smart thing to Oprah the municipality to see if there's a concomitant resolution approving that minor subdivision, just to clean that piece up since you got to come back. And secondarily, my proposal to the board, I heard what Mr. Hill said, but just so this application doesn't get lost, on behalf of both your client and the board, quite frankly, is I would propose carrying it to the, we'll just see real quick, to the April 6th, 2022 meeting without the requirement of further notice. That would give you sufficient time to both make a determination pursuant to what Mr. Hill says. And if you require then more time, you can ask to carry it again.
As I'm presenting the application, and I would do so again come the next meeting, I will be away on that meeting date.
So the April 6 and 7 is 13, and 13 is April 20th, 2022 meeting. Huh? I could have done that, but it's easier to go 7 and 7.
If we could do that, that would be
Okay.
fine.
So ladies and gentlemen, application number 5, Miguel Santana, variance number 3397 will be carried to the April 20, 2022 meeting without the requirement of further notice. The applicant has waived time through April 30, 2020.
Very good. Thank you so much for listening to the application, and we'll get all the information pulled together.
All
Thanks
right, your
again.
dream home will be coming, all right? But you have some.
Thank you very much.
All right. I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I don't have to drive home.
You're